Alrighty, welcome everyone to what appears to be the first time we've had almost everyone on the board in the same room. The reason why is because we had the official photo today, so that was amazing because I forgot that it was photo day, but we'll be okay. With that, I'd like to recognize we're conducting our business today on the territories of the Coopetchison and Shawkey First Nations, and to recognize that fact and to honor it. We are still conducting a hybrid meeting as well, but in this instance, I believe the only member of the board who will be connecting in will be Mayor Director Minions, because she's quite busy with her kids. With that, I would also like to state that we are broadcasting our meeting live on YouTube, which you can connect through YouTube or embedded in our own website. And lastly, I think the only thing is just to introduce the folks online and folks in the boardroom. So we have a big group of folks today, so we'll go counterclockwise. So here we have Wendy Thompson, member of staff, Director McNabb and Vice Chair McNabb from Beaver Creek. We have Director Ron Corbeil. Dr. Minions is not present. Director Cote, I can't see who that is. Oh, that's Wilfred. He's not here either. And we have Director Bodner. Alan is not here as well. Yeah. Sorry. We have Director Bob Beckett and Director Cal Roberts, as well as sorry. It's the name tags. I want to look at them and I can't see them. I'm not remembering what they are. Director Rochelle Cole and Director Johnson, Director Shannon, Director Steer. And thank you all for coming. Lastly, we have our CAO, Daniel Sayan. I'd like to welcome everyone online and who may be watching online as well. And from that, I think that's it. Our approval of the agenda is a bit complicated today. We have one thing that we're canceling, which is the presentation from the Ministry of Transportation. I believe we couldn't make it. And there are 3 items to add for consideration, which will be added to items 8G regarding the Maplehurst Park Management Plan, Governance and Expansion, Public Submissions. There's quite a few of those apparently, as well as section 9.1A and 9.1C, both of which are temporary use permits, which are public submissions. Are there any other items to add the agenda or modify the agenda, Leslie? Seeing none, if we could have the motion to adopt as amended, please. Thank you, Director Corbeil, seconded by Director Johnson. Ready? Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to the adoption of minutes. We have a pair here. We have the Electoral Area Directors Committee meeting minutes from July 27th, 2022. Thank you, Director Beckett, seconded by Director Steer. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us to item B, which is the Board of Directors meeting minutes for July 27th, 2022. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Bodner. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed?
Unmute. Okay.
Motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations, of which normally each presenter has a 10-minute maximum to their presentation. With a bit of leeway, if you're pretty close to the end of your presentation, usually what'll happen is I'll hold up 1 or 2 fingers and that'll tell you how many minutes you have left. If I want you to stop, I'll just interrupt you, so don't worry about that. With that in mind, the first person we have up is Constable Elizabeth Connor from our Indigenous Policing Services for Port Alberni with an update on youth violence and associated gang and affiliated lifestyle groups. So an update there. Thank you and welcome.
I gotta press the button. Yeah, we're good. I'm just gonna start the PowerPoint here. My friend in the corner here, right away. So call it. Big button issue.
Yeah. Go to slideshow.
Great, thank you, friends, for that. So my name is Constable Beth O'Connor. I'm here today with my friends Nick Serdick from 8th Avenue Learning Center and Jamie Richmond from Teaching Youth Outreach. I'm here to discuss with you the enormous topic of at-risk youth and what gang affiliations look like in our community. Like I said, this is a large topic, so what I'm actually going to do is sort of skim through. It's an hour presentation, and really just hopefully leave you with the key takeaways. I work in Indigenous policing, and in 2019, I headed a police-led pilot program. It's called Four Paddles, or was called Four Paddles. It stood for Culture, Justice, Health, and Community. Essentially what it was an assertive new method of community policing. And what it involved was an entrenched collaboration of police working directly with at-risk youth in the community, so our frontline. And through our work together, the police, Four Paddles members, myself, worked very closely with our partners and followed a large group of high-risk youth, our highest risk youth, and some young adults. And what we found is that there was a growing rumors and talk amongst this group of AFN. AFN is a term associated to a gang that we've actually been hearing about a lot in Port Alberni over the years, but we never really found any structure, any significant gang ties, and it sort of fell apart. We had our previous youth officer do a fair bit of work on that, so we're not quite concerned. But when we heard it again, we were sort of paying attention to see was there any more significance to it now. So in the past, AFN did have being jumped into the gang, so to speak. There was videos of fights. There's a bit of an informal fight club. But again, we weren't too worried because it sort of faded away. We actually saw some graffiti in town too, but again, it seemed to go away with kids that were sort of leaving the school population. What we were learning about this spring were multiple assaults on youth by youth. These assaults were video recorded and placed online. Many of these were not reported to police. The humiliation of youth, of the victims, was sort of a key piece. And that prevented a lot of these kids, obviously, from reporting some of this stuff that was going on. A lot of the violence was precipitated by harassment online and sometimes followed up with more harassment. Assaults were typically one or two attackers, and then when the victim fell to the ground, we had a swarming of youth kicking and punching. Just going to skip ahead. In March, we had a very serious assault occur at a school here in town. Started as a fight. One youth was seriously injured. This youth was taken to a hospital by ambulance. Luckily, staff at the school were literally, right there to be able to interrupt and pull one youth off the other. Watching that video was quite disturbing. It is very fast, very violent, and there's certainly a loss of control. Some of the behavior that followed this assault was quite concerning. Everyone was really hands on deck, watching what was going to happen next. We were already sort of aware of these bullying things that were happening. And what we found later on was that some of these affiliated to AFN had actually recorded the ambulance going out to hospital. Youth were actively trying to get photos of this injured youth. Very disturbing. Lots of online smack talk quite proud, a lot of bravado. Following these events, there was retaliation. So we had a youth expressing that he wanted to purchase a firearm and come back and kill one of these AFN associates. So, and I do want to draw attention to the fact that out of this large group that had been following, young adults and youth, we had a homicide and we also had a stabbing. So the potential for this to actually come through for youth to kill another youth was absolutely real. So our Indigenous policing team basically scoured our police database system and looked for all assaults related to youth, or if there was ever a mention of AFN or anything else. So we looked for assaults that might happen in or near the schools, or just mentioned to youth that we might be familiar with. Basically drained our system of all the youth that we were looking at. So what we found, there were over 30 reported assaults on youth, many of which were thoroughly investigated, all parties spoken to. But when we reopened a lot of these investigations, what we found was that the youth weren't really fulsome in their report. Even if a parent or a teacher or an outreach worker were the first to learn about the assault, they weren't sharing the whole story. It wasn't until we looked online and actually saw some of these really, really disturbing videos of assaults and the humiliation that went with, and of course understood why maybe that youth just kind of wanted it to go away. It was reported to police and they're kind of happy to move on. And keep in mind that from an individual perspective, police officers doing a really good job. However, police and schools really, one of our objectives is not to arrest youth. It's not to go criminal, right? It's trying to resolve it locally, put some safety measures in place. So that's what happened. But somewhere along the line, we really weren't seeing what was happening. So AFN and NBH, in doing some open source media looks, we found AFN had quite a significant online presence, lots of videos, again, lots of talk about jumping people, binge drinking, drugs, violence, respect. And then we stumbled across NBH. NBH stands for Natural Born Hustlers. And we found a site started by local grade 8 and 9 girls, actually. And it's, I think it's up here, yeah, NBH_Bloody Knuckles. We saw quite a bit of disturbing content on there, including intentions to target other youth. Most of the sites and the content are private. So we're only able to really look at what some of the youth are sharing after we sort of approach them with the help of our friends here. But quite concerning. One of the quickest things actually that we came across on one of these AFN sites, again, a private site, but we were able to do some links and sneak around in there legally. And we found a video of the Port Alberni gun range. And there was a couple of fellows there, couldn't be ID'd by the video, but they were firing a assault rifle, 12 gauge shotgun, pump action, and a 9mm handgun. Literally the same firepower that police carry. And that video couldn't have been too far in the past, because based on renovations and things that have happened, and we spent a fair bit of time there doing our training, we know this video was not old. Again, no connection to this site or comment. It was just one of the first things that came up. So profile of youth and the risk factors. Who are youth in town and what's drawing them to this AFN and BH type stuff. The overwhelming majority are Indigenous. Most attend a school only part-time or not at all. Most are in the care of asthma or living with a parent experiencing significant substance use or violence. These youth live relatively independently. They're found all hours of the day and night intoxicated in our local parks. They can be missing or AWOL from their group homes or family homes for days at a time. Some of these youth are not on our radar. Some of these youth are from other communities, and then I'm all the West Coast. And they're here with the knowledge of some guardian, but they're literally couch surfing and living very close to the street. So us is not aware, police are not aware unless they come across us. These youth are fiercely loyal to each other, and hopefully my friend Jamie can talk a little bit about that. This is a group that identifies very strongly with each other, and they might be assaulted by someone in this group, even sexually assaulted, and then a week later, sticking up and involved in another fight on behalf of this youth. So this is a very difficult dynamic to break into, very strong bond. I just want to talk to you a little bit, touch on the differences between sort of what we think of as a traditional game and what we're looking at with the AFN and MBH. And I didn't mention earlier, but we don't actually know what AFN stands for. A House of First Nations been thrown out, all for none. We still don't actually know. None of the youth that we see at the center of this are House of First Nation affiliates, so we're not sure about that yet. Traditional gangs, as we know, have somewhat of a structure. They're often affiliated with, reflective colors, a patch, signs, titles, things like that. We don't see that with this gang here. Youth gangs are increasingly built through social media contacts, and we can absolutely see that here. Both these groups have a huge online presence and membership, even outside of what we do see here that's common amongst youth gangs across the country, United States, is this socioeconomic connection. Kids feeling really disenfranchised, unempowered. Just a picture of some gangsters that are maybe more familiar to us.
I'm just going to hit pause here. I
Sure.
think everyone's interested enough to hear to the end of this presentation. So if we could have a motion to do that. Thank you, Director Cotes. Director McMahon, second. All those in favor? Motion carried. Please continue.
Great.
Take your time.
You bet. Thanks. And I am almost at the end here. And so I do want to mention that we absolutely have the presence of outlaw motorcycle gangs here. Canada, really the drug trade across the country is the majority of the drug trade is controlled by the Hells Angels and their affiliate groups. And that presence is absolutely here. So for our handful of, mid-level dealers we have in town, there's probably only 1 or 2 degrees of separation between them and an organized crime organization close by or on the mainland. So I want to give my friends an opportunity to speak. Both Nick and Jamie, through their respective work, are really meeting the needs of these youth. And I want to say too, some of these youth we know very well, and they are great. Like, even some of these kids who do these really terrible things are awesome kids when you get to know them. So Jamie and Nick are involved in programs and developing programs that are literally going out and finding these kids. And they're building their work and how they do their work without judgment, and they're getting results. They're drawing kids back into school and back into some sense of structure and normalcy, even with a year or more being disconnected. Some of the youth that we have engaged in this project didn't finish grade school. They're not going to high school. They're not going to get their driver's license. It's becoming so common. So I might just ask Nick, if you will, just to chat a little bit about 8th Avenue School and low barriers. Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon on such an important topic. I can't think of anything more important than the youth in our community. 8th Avenue Learning Center, many of you will know as the VAST Education Center formerly. We are now on 8th Avenue, of course, and we welcome students from all over, even from out of town. So we have very few barriers to coming to our school, and we want to make sure that we're a very welcoming school. As Constable O'Connor mentioned last year, in unison with the Ministry of the Attorney General and USMA, we were able to develop a very unique program in our school where we got together with various community agencies, other schools, and just said, who is not coming to school? Who is very, very disengaged? We're not talking about, skipping class a few times or several times a month. we're talking about not being in school for a year, 2 years, and seeing that detrimental impact that that had on those youth. So as Constable O'Connor mentioned, we went knocking on doors, met with families, and tried to develop ways to welcome those students back on their terms. We understand that going to school from 8:30 till 3 o'clock is not realistic for every single student, and we realize that biology 12 or upper level math might not be the best fit for students. How can we develop that sense of belonging, that sense of connection to school, to community? How can we meet the basic needs for so many of our students? Thank goodness in our community, there's so many wonderful agencies that work together to ensure that basic needs are met. But I'm pretty confident to say that all of our students at 8th Avenue will have food, they'll have clothing, they'll have shelter that we can help them find if we don't have it in our school. So we developed a program that was a part-time program where it was all experiential learning. We appreciate that academics is tremendously important for every student in our community, but we also need to develop that positive sense of self and that future focus. How can we get each of those students to have a small feeling of success each day to entice them to come back the next day? So we developed an Indigenous garden last year, students developing their math skills through building garden beds, the volume of soil. This past year, we just received approval from School District 70 to build our own smokehouse on site at school. Students will be building that starting in October. We'll be having a fishing program, working with Indigenous communities, professionals throughout our community about salmon enhancement, processing, all of these kinds of hands-on things that students will find engaging and targeting the youth that Constable O'Connor was mentioning. So we're looking forward to this school year. There's a lot of work to be done, and this process is not going to be fixed. Everything's not going to be fixed within months. This is years of work that we need to do. And we have the students from 8:30 till 3 for sure. But as a community, what can we offer students as well outside of 3 o'clock? And I appreciate the Parks and Rec pieces that we see, the drop-in opportunities that our youth have. And I'm more inclined now to be thinking about work opportunities for students. And so that students can feel positive about developing a strong future for themselves. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
And if we have a few moments, I'd like to have Jamie just to talk about who these youth are. She's very close to this group. Yeah, come on. Your slide here, if you need.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Richmond, and I'm the youth outreach for NTC's Teach Up program. I've been with the program now for almost 2 years, and I've really gotten to know this specific group of high-risk youth in our community. And they're really, really amazing youth. They are. Even though all of this is happening, getting to know them one-on-one, there's so many barriers to them in their lives. And what I'm noticing now is the loyalty to their peers is more than anything else. We think, why can't they just go to police and report this, or stay away from this person, or just not go out and drink or do drugs? And it's not as simple as that. Their friends are their family. Sometimes they don't have family, and that's everything to them. So maybe one day they're hurting each other, but the next day they're going to have their back. And a lot of the times, they're portrayed in a certain way, but in reality, they want to be involved in their community. They really do. I asked them to volunteer with our events, or to, get involved more with 8th Avenue. They want to do this, but a lot of times they don't feel valued. They don't feel heard, or they can't see any hope for their future because of how they have grown up. They just think, there is no hope. This is my life now, and I'm going to accept it. So, places like 8th Avenue School is really giving them an opportunity and a sense of safety. So I've been working lots with 8th Avenue and also with the IPS team to, the kids are in survival mode every single day. And so to help develop that sense of safety for me is number one priority. Groups like the city offers Nights Alive, sense of safety, somewhere solid they can go every Wednesday. It's these types of programs that are going to help the youth feel safe, feel like people care about them and that they matter just as much as everyone else in our community, because they are super vulnerable to, being on the street, to the sex trade in our community. It's just a snapshot away. But with different programs and opportunities, they do go that way. They just need to have people that believe in them and, give them a chance and don't view them as bad kids because they're not. Thank you.
Thank you. We could probably talk about this all afternoon, especially some of the kids that have fallen off in our community, and they are downtown. They are involved in sex trade, and they're very young. They're just 18, 19 years old. So, but that's a whole nother presentation. But yeah, thank you. If there's any questions.
Yeah, but before we start, I think some of the background is that Indigenous Policing gave a presentation to Hooyah June, before then?
I want to say early June.
Early June. And it just occurred to me that it would be beneficial for the regional district to hear this. Obviously not exactly the same content, but I think this is a situation that is affecting not just the Alberni Valley, but potentially the whole West Coast. And so I think it's important for us to have received this information and understand that the work that we do in seemingly innocuous services matters. That providing the space and the time for our youth to actually have things to do presents for us an alternative to the life that they may not be living, the life that they're merely surviving, and so on and so forth. So, it's a bit cliche to say it now, but everything is one. Hishuk Masala. Everything is connected. And so understanding how these things fit together and understanding the repercussions of decisions we make here can make things better, make things worse, or often just a mixed bag of complications into the future. So the more we can do to think about not just achieving more or going from good to great, but how we treat the people who are most vulnerable and how we think about what they may need in order to even be just thinking about the community as a whole, we create stability by creating stability for folks like this. And these sorts of things, the situations that these youth and adolescents find themselves in, these are the things we need to help prevent. It's going to always be cheaper in time and money and effort to prevent these things from happening, but we also have to help the kids who are lost find their way again. And it's not making them do it. It's like you can't hold the sand too tight or else it'll get away from you. And so I think I'll just leave it at that. I want to thank you for your presentation. We'll open it up for comments and questions now. I imagine there are plenty. We might want to do a committee of the whole next time you have time. But please, anyone, go ahead. Dr. Roberts.
Chair, thank you very much, Councilor. This has been a real eye-opener. The fact that major gangs are involved, which we are bringing this into here in this case. I think a lot of us knew that this year. The work that the other people are doing for the school is really commendable. And from my perspective as a regional director on these schools, I really appreciate it for your hard work.
Thank you.
Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. It's a horrifying presentation to think about our community having vulnerability such as this. When we're sitting here at this table trying to make decisions on moving our community forward in an accepting way for everyone, I'd really like to see the presentation go to the health network as well. And I'm wondering which organizations, I know there must be a list of them, but organizations like A Cause, which isn't called A Cause anymore, but I know that there's quite a number of organizations that you must be affiliated with. It would be really nice to know who they are. Because the regional district, we get grant and aids come to us once a year, and knowing who is benefiting through their causes is important in making the decisions at this table. So I'd really like more information on that if possible. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, yes, thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions? Director Bodnar, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gutted after that this is all going on in our community to such an extent. Is Port Alberni unique, or are you able to collaborate with other communities that have the same problem? And
That's a really good question, and we're certainly not unique, especially with the onset of opioid epidemic and COVID and other things. Kids are disenfranchised from schools, so I'd say no. There's a lot of advantages of being Port Alberni. We're not huge. We do have a lot of resources here, but what I will say is that we've seen a huge increase in the vulnerability of youth, especially, and starting to see sex trade for young people, younger and younger, starting to grow in our community. It's very shocking to me several years ago to come across a young lady at the OPS, very much underage and using heroin, and was well known to agencies in the community. I was a police officer working with youth. I'd never heard of this young lady, and I work in Indigenous policing, and I think I know all of these. And then come to know that her younger sister is now here in town, and realizing, oh, now we have about maybe 8 to 10 heavy opioid addicted youth in our community. So unfortunately on that front, probably not super unique, but we, in formation of this program for paddles, I actually shadowed other police detachments and did a lot of research from here all the way to Hamilton, Ontario, so we're not reinventing the wheel, that's working. Part of, for us, we really wanted to create a program that was Port Alberni and that served Chelmsford people, so that we really understand what we need here, and that we're not trying to cookie cutter another program. And I think that's what really worked. Yeah, at the end of the day.
So I think one thing that had occurred to me in contemplating this agenda item was, are you, and it's related to what Director Bodnar had stated, are you working with other, I guess, expert units in British Columbia? And to what degree should we be aware of that work? Because it seems like it will help aid our response to that thing. And secondly, sorry, I have 2 more questions after this. The second one is, I'm reading articles about a lack of RCMP members being available to actually be police officers in communities. Yeah, to what degree is that affecting us? Maybe that's a question for white shirts. And then lastly, and this may be actually just Director Minions's or Director Corbeil's place. I remember reading some stuff about how vital programs like Knights Alive require volunteers to keep going. And so I think that's something we can all take away and make sure that we have a good understanding about, is that these types of things survive based on community coming together. So First Nations are doing what they can when they can. Different nations have different capacities. We have to understand that. But how we coordinate is still a question that remains to be seen. And I just wouldn't mind a quarterly check-in on something like this moving forward. Okay. Yeah, I asked a bunch of questions, but just answer whatever you can.
Yeah, no, good. The Port Paddles program actually is done. We wrote a grant and received a BC civil forfeitures money, and we hired an Indigenous social worker, not Indigenous social worker, but a social worker who specialized in Indigenous trauma full time, because when the pilot started in 2019, started to really get a lot of really good output. And I need to manage this program with someone else. I need that other piece. It's the foundations of this program are kind of based on the principles of social work, but that grant expired, so it's gone. This is a great program. We really sort of stepped away from the traditional model of community policing, even Indigenous policing, frankly, to really sort of hit the need, like, let's dive in, and that we have great results. So unfortunately, we don't have funding for that program anymore. And I'm back to my usual duties, which I still very much enjoy. So I'd say, yeah, that's huge. And again, this was an entrenched collaboration. It's not meetings, it's not managers talking, it's really getting in there. And that's what you need to do to be on top of some of this stuff. And then further to that, our next stage was to become mobile and then add that big preventative piece. So looking at these kids that we're dealing with now at, between 15 and 17, 18, and dial back 5-6 years. Who were these kids 5-6 years ago? And let's get really serious about what's going to take, because these kids come from, and from a police perspective, I can see what it looks like on my database. I don't even have to meet these kids. I see the sexual abuse investigations. I see the domestic violence. I know what these kids have come with, and now they're not living at home, right? They're in care. So that's the reality. We can't turn that back. But we can definitely hit on some of these risk factors. So we have to do that in a very different way. The resourcing piece, absolutely. We don't have a youth officer right now. It's not filled. But I'll leave that explanation to my betters at the detachment to talk about. We did do a document at the end with our findings, so I can present that as well. So we did that pretty much every year, and then we did like a big wrap up. What did we find? What did we see? Some of the stats are great. We had youth that was arrested many times, charged with criminal offenses, in our cells, being intubated at a hospital regularly. We're talking about heavy suicidal-like drinking. One of those youth was in my office yesterday. She's working on our program. She's engaged. She's actually informing our program. We're trying to get in some of these kids' heads, right? So it can be done, but you have to know these kids, and that's where people like Jamie and Nick come in their programs. So this is the kind of program I'm talking about. Very aggressive, very assertive. But yes, I do have a document that I could certainly share.
That would be excellent. You've covered a lot of ground. I'm just going to say that it's very disheartening to hear that younger people are starting to drink that heavily. My brother died as a result of that just recently. And even when you do know somebody, it's still hard to reach them. So the work that we do earlier is very important. So yeah. Are there any other comments or questions? Sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry. I did mention you, Director Minions. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. First of all, Constable O'Connor, Jamie and Nick, thank you so much for all the work that you do in our community. We are so incredibly lucky to have people as dedicated as you. And I know that you're not the only one. So really just want to appreciate the difference that you're making for young people and individuals on an ongoing basis in our community. So thank you. John, you mentioned Nights Alive, and it was mentioned by Constable O'Connor as well. Nights Alive is an incredible program, but it's Wednesday nights and usually every other Saturday as well. And that is, there's not a lot of just drop-in programs for youth. There's not a lot of safe spaces. We don't have, a 24/7 youth center or a lot of other things that we probably could benefit from in our community. And I think that there's a lot more of an opportunity. I think from the city's perspective, we haven't done as much as we need to. And I think there's a lot more opportunity for the city and regional district to work together on these things. And I'm certainly not suggesting that the city, try to push a portion of our costs onto the regional district. I'm suggesting that the regional district look for a way to invest to add to what the city is doing. And Director Cote mentioned grants and aid, and I have to think back to our budget this year when the Family Resource Society came through and talked about counseling services for youth, often youth whose families can't afford counseling, offering programs for youth who are at risk, offering programs for youth who have been abused. And the board almost didn't fund that request. And I know it was outside of our scope, and I know that it was a big cost, but It's difficult at budget time to balance those needs, but I think we need to make sure we're thinking of presentations like this at budget time and really prioritizing the needs of our community rather than just a number that we're trying to meet for our budgets. So, this kind of thing is second nature to the city to recognize that we have to fund. And I understand that it hasn't always been to the regional district. And that's just the reality of how our two governments have evolved. But I think if we work together and if we both, bring money to the table, we can offer a lot more for youth in need in our community. So just leaving that there, I know it's a difficult topic when money is involved, but I think we need to jointly be doing a lot more in our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank all of you for presenting. And this is something that I think having regular updates on and potentially even discussing maybe after the election, whether or not there's an appetite for a more detailed conversation about how these things fit together, maybe in a closed meeting, in camera kind of thing, maybe inviting other members of First Nations communities and so on and so forth would be helpful. Maybe even provincial assets as well. So once again, thank you, and we hope to see you again.
I think I can do this.
Okay. I think there's like a little X at the very center top. Yeah, perfect. Okay, next up we have Mr. David Michaud, President of the Alberni Valley Bulldogs. Thank you and welcome.
Okay, thank you for having me, guys. Much appreciated. I think the last time that the Bulldogs organization was here in front of you was, I think, before the 1920 season. We had John Heisler, who was here. He served as our corporate partnership person at that time. So it's been a while. Since then, a whole lot's happened in the world that certainly not only affected the community as a whole, but our organization as well with the Bulldogs. When COVID struck, it pretty much, canceled the 2020 season. With great work of city council, we were able to salvage a pod season, is what we referred to it as, at the multiplex, where the Bulldogs were able to host other island teams here in Port Alberni. And so it led to a 20-game season for each team and some decent revenue for the multiplex and restaurant partners as Victoria and Nanaimo and Duncan came to town to play all their games. So fairly novel for us to not have to get on a bus that year and get through it. But, for me, it's hard hearing your presentation and not, I guess, in one respect, appreciating the level of youth that I get to work with. That are 16 to 20-year-old high performance athletes who are so focused on the goals in front of them when it comes to achieving an NCAA scholarship and moving on to play at the next level of the game, and their commitment in the gym and all those things. And so would love to connect with you guys and understand maybe how our organization can help, whether it's through volunteerism or having your youth involved in our game nights and things like that. So, certainly appreciative of the level of athlete that we get to work with and what they represent in the community. Our group last season, for the first time, really began to work closely with Chief Ken Watson to shot. Our players walked on Truth and Reconciliation Day for the first time, and that formed a bit of a partnership that has me very excited moving forward into this year. And we're just about to announce that we've created a special jersey that'll be worn on the 29th this year, and then we'll wear on the 29th that evening when we play in Duncan against Cowichan. And then we'll wear one more time at home, and then we're going to auction those jerseys off, and all the proceeds are going to go to a program that Chief Watts seems to be excited about. I guess we still have that last piece of the puzzle to figure out. But I guess for me today, what was important was to, give you sort of an update as to where we're at. I consider the ACRD to be one of our top corporate partners. I want to give you sort of an update on where our organization is now since the last time we were in front of you, and some of the opportunities that are in front of us. So I guess the one nice thing is since 2019, we've really established ourselves as a top, I would say, 5 team in the BCHL. We still have a little work to do to get to the Penticton level. But on the ice, we won our first conference championship in 12 years, I believe it was. Fell a little bit short in the playoffs, but that's hockey and sports. But certainly on the ice, things are headed in the right direction. This young man here, his name's Emmanuel Charbonneau. He came to us from Quebec when he was 16. And I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to see the feature that TSN did on Emmanuel. But at a young age, he lost his mom and was raised by his grandparents. And we brought Manu out here when he was 16 to become a Bulldog, and he has a full ride college scholarship to go to the University of Nebraska Omaha when he's done with us at the end of this year. The story was so compelling. TSN ended up doing just over a 9-minute full feature on Charvy, and came and spent some time here in the community, and was I think a really nice highlight of our community and certainly the surrounding areas. Since 2019, we've also debuted the Port Alberni Bombers, which are our Junior B franchise. So same age level of players, that 16 to 20-year-old age. But I would consider them to be a feeder program to the Bulldogs. I'm proud to say that they weren't a huge success on the ice as an expansion team last year, but we almost stuck one out against Campbell River in the first round. But 5 of those players in the first year are moving on to junior A hockey, which is no small feat for where they started. So we're excited about that. And 2 of them are going to become Bulldogs. So we kind of see a natural progression there. And what was really exciting about that too, we had 11 local players last year that grew up in the Alberni minor hockey system and go to high school across the street. And we saw great attendance from the youth. At the high school. Tickets were free for youngsters when they come with a mom or dad, and if they just come on their own, it's $5. So we saw a huge high school contingent come out and support their friends, which was great. So speaking of the free youth, we launched last year the SAN Group program that 18 and under get into all Bulldogs and Bombers games at no charge. When accompanied by an adult, and that saw nearly a 60% increase in youth attendance from 1920 to last year, which for me was huge, and certainly appreciative of the monetary support from the SAN Group to allow us to do a program like that. But from the community standpoint, to be able to have families be able to come and have a very inexpensive night at the multiplex was something that was really, really important to us. I kind of kid this summer, our ticket prices are recession proof, and we seem to be about the only thing that is. So we're proud of the offerings we can make to families. So our partnership over the years, these are a few of the elements that are currently in the multiplex and on our website. Obviously a big focus on the Sort and Go program, both in the stairs and on the rink boards. There's some mural graphics throughout the facility. And then we have a space on our website that we dedicate to you guys front and center, where we show both support for the district and the city, but that's creative. That can be updated as much as somebody wants to send me something. That's a very easy update. So the big opportunity for us this year, our organization invested a little over $200,000 this year in the multiplex with the addition of an LED digital screen. It's approximately 10 feet high by 17 feet wide. So it's a fairly impressive television at the end of the rink. So obviously from the fan perspective, that's going to lead to all kinds of exciting new things like replays for the first time. And, the always famous kiss cam at the hockey game will, I'm sure, produce a chuckle or two. But obviously then for our corporate partners, there's great opportunity to utilize the screen from education standpoint on Sort and Go and other programs that are important for the district to be able to either create awareness for or literally run actual commercials for, or features where the players are involved and things like that. would love to see something along the lines of branded recycling receptacles inside the multiplex. We're moving to no single-use plastic from the Bulldogs perspective this year. I'm sure, I hope at least some of you have been able to try our Bulldog Lager from Dog Mountain. We're going to crack cans and give, so it'd be nice to have some sort and go recycling areas inside the arena with that branding and just continue to push that. But certainly education, social media is a huge opportunity for us. Player appearances, the branded recycling at the multiplex. So historically, we've sort of been at that $25,000 annual commitment. In 2019, 2020, the Bulldogs did not do a good job living up to the deliverables that were promised to you. And I think we ended up cutting the payment about half for that year. And then during the COVID shortened 2020, 2021 season, there was no investment at all, just based on the fact that there was no hockey being played and there were no fans in the multiplex. And then last year when we returned, we did sort of a smaller $15,000 package, which was essentially just the physical elements that were inside the multiplex. And so my hope this year is getting the screen in the building and more normality as far as the players are concerned and their ability to do appearances and get back out into the community, that we can get back to some of the traditional player opportunities, and then take advantage of that screen and have the ACRD promoting the sort and go and other opportunities that exist. So, thank you very much, guys.
Alrighty, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if anybody on the board has any comments or questions. Dr. Beckett, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, how many of your players on both rosters, your Junior B and Junior A, would be from the region?
So as I said, I believe it was 11 were on the Bombers roster a year ago. And then the number will be very similar this year as well, again, on the Junior B team. And then right now we have one for sure. Caden Tremblay was a rookie defenseman last year. He's obviously back. And then our hope is that we might have one more born and raised Port Alberni player. But that's up to them, I guess, how training camp goes. But it's possible that too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
And with the Junior B Bombers, are they eligible for NCAA as well?
They are. It's a little more rare that a school will scout that level. The more likely path is that through the Bulldogs, they'll ascend to the next level, or as we see in the case of some of the other ones, move on to another Junior A team, and that's where they have the opportunity to showcase themselves. But you do see the odd scholarship come directly out of Junior B. Callum Tongue, who was our goalie last year for the Bombers, set a bunch of records in the playoffs, stopped, if you can believe it, 69 out of 71 shots in the game against Campbell River. He was getting a lot of phone calls this summer through us, but just interest. So I would think that he'll get one fairly quickly this year. So it's possible to get enough attention too.
I raised that having a son who's just received a scholarship. And how that benefits us financially as a family,
Of course.
and any youth, including our local youth,
Yeah.
that could end up playing for the Bulldogs is something that we can't lose sight of, given the value. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I mean, the economics are certainly interesting. I mean, now with the Bombers, we're up to about a $1.4 million annual operating budget between both organizations. That's about $1 million plus for the Bulldogs, and then about a little over $380,000 for the Bombers. So you can see there's obviously pressure on the revenue side that we got to match expenses. But even having the number of local players, particularly on the Bombers side, was a huge boom for the school district, having that number of athletes in town, of the funding side of things. And, we've gone back and forth with the school district on, continued involvement in the Hockey Canada Skills Academy that the high school offers. And our new assistant coach, who we just brought on, his name's Ryan Rayhill. Ryan was a teacher by trade in Parksville last year, but he went through the Western Hockey League, got his degree from the University of Alberta, drafted by the New Jersey Devils. Unfortunately, never got a chance to play pro hockey, but took his scholarship money from the Western League and decided coaching was a little more exciting than being a grade school teacher in Parksville. So hopefully there's some opportunities for him as well. But again, just showing some of the integration, especially on the fiscal side with the school board and some of those opportunities. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Dr. Corbeil, go ahead.
Thank you. And David, thank you for your presentation. More of a comment than anything, and this is just hearing so far the presentation on the youth and questions about volunteers needed for the Knights Alive and how important sports really is. Years ago, when I went to Malaspina College, I volunteered at the Island Youth Center, and the one denominator was sports for these kids, whether it was playing floor hockey or soccer or even going into the weight room. And so much of what Constable Connor talked about, those kids told me the same thing. They'd almost given up in a lot of respects. They bounced from family to family, and their next move was going to the big prison. But if we could get kids involved in sports at an early age, and this is where the volunteers come in, you hear people moaning all the time about everything that's wrong. Well, get out and volunteer, coach your soccer team, coach your ball team, get those kids involved in sports, and then you guys come in at, that's the pinnacle. If I'm good enough, maybe I can be a Bulldog one day. So everything is connected, certainly, and I really appreciate what you guys.
And thanks for the comment. Yeah, speaking with Chief Watts last year, it was really eye-opening. Our assistant coach last year was a gentleman by the name of Wasey Rabbit, and Wasey grew up in Alberta on a reservation, and he always likes to joke that if he could make it to pro hockey, he was a Boston Bruins draft pick. Anybody could make it, but the relationship that he and Ken formed fairly quickly was impressive. But again, it's hard to hear the stories when Chief Watts would say to Wasey, you give our youth hope that they can become something. And I grew up thinking I could be whatever I wanted to be. And that's powerful, and that wasn't lost on me. And so despite Wasey moving on, he had an opportunity in Saskatoon that he couldn't say no to. He was the captain of the Blades for a number of years when he played there. They lured him back. So I'm happy for Wasey and his wife, Ashley. But, my promise to Wasey as he was packing up his coach's office was the things we started this year aren't going to stop just because you're not here now. And so I'm excited for our guys to be involved. I'm excited I know it's not over, but for COVID to be over so we can get back to these player appearances that our guys are so accustomed to. And it's such a huge part of the junior hockey experience is the volunteerism and getting back. And, I think hockey is a wonderful sport, but as we've all heard in recent weeks, there's a little bit of an ugly side to hockey right now in Canada. And I want our group led by Joe Martin, our longtime head coach and GM. Joe's going to his 14th year in the BCHL now, to be leaders in change and be involved in the community and eliminate, roadblocks for guys to get involved in sports. And can we create Bulldogs ball hockey leagues in the summer that gets, our youth excited, and they really need a stick and a pair of running shoes, right? Not all the expensive equipment and expensive ice time. And I know how powerful sport was to me, and it's a perfect point because I had sports all the way from youth to now. And so I'd like to continue to find ways to get involved in that and give back. So
I very much appreciate the conversation that just occurred. And it occurs to me that I should mention that one thing we should look into is if there actually is a scarcity of volunteerism and why. There's a theory that I've read that there aren't as many volunteers today because people are too busy trying to put food on the table. And if that's the case, then that's something we have to think on and see what's going on there, right? Because I didn't play hockey, but the sports teams I was a part of, I saw them become the structure and the family that a lot of my peers needed when I was growing up as a kid. And so I think understanding that sport in general isn't just about the tip top, which is what the Bulldogs are close to, right? But it's everything. It's the pyramid that goes towards that. Even the bottom levels, the rec leagues, all that kind of stuff has positive impact. And if they're successful, hopefully we can send a few people up your way And I think people can get behind that. I think we just need to remind folks that it's going to take the time to do it. And we got to find the people who have the time to do it.
Yeah, we've got a great volunteer base at the multiplex. Always more hands are better. And if there's an opportunity to involve, we can always find roles for them, but it's like having that purpose 27 nights a year to come out and be a part of something. The first slide I had said the passion returns. I mean, if somebody else says to me, I remember the good old days when the multiplex was sold out every night. I'm growing tired of that conversation. I'm ready to have it full again. And, I was proud of last year when the restrictions were lifted and the playoffs were here, and there was an excitement in the community and a buzz about our team again. And the players felt it viscerally when they walked in around town. They couldn't go get groceries or go to Boomerangs without somebody saying, hey, good luck tonight. And, we were getting 13, 14, 1,500 fans a night back in the playoffs. And so I think that's a great launching point for this year. And I live here now, in 2019. The last time we were here, I lived in Victoria, but I moved here this year and spent my first summer here, and this is home. We've invested between the Bulldogs and the Bombers well over $1 million to operate hockey here in the Valley. And we're here for a long time. I'm negotiating literally with Willa right now to bring the council a 10-year lease extension at the multiplex. And we want to make sure that hockey is viable here for a long, long time. So thank you.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so that brings us to our third and final delegation, Mr. Dwayne Richmond, regarding a temporary use permit regarding Central Lake Road. So thank you and welcome. Yeah. Just make sure you hit the this talk button on there. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, my name's Dwayne Richmond. Okay, I'm new to this and never done one of these before. So, just trying to open up and help community. Same thing is, like you even said, I think what it's happening is everybody's too busy to do things like volunteer. I think people are starting to step back and want their life back. So they're, maybe downsizing or whatever the reason is, and just, I think everybody's been burned out. I'm on day 65 straight. To me, this is a day off because I took half a day, but I'm going back to work in 100-degree weather. So I'm on 65 days straight, and I got, I don't know how many more days in a row to go. I'm just so overbooked. We're at least 6 months behind at all times because, for one, we can't get any workers. We find there's a big shortage in town.
Yeah. What do you do? Sorry.
Oh, I own a construction roofing company for the last 30 years. Yeah. So it's been a struggle, like quite a bit, because it's a tough job. It's so it's hard to find guys. We have found guys on the mainline and stuff, but it's fun why I came up with this idea too is nobody can come here. At one time, I had a 12-man crew and it was doing pretty good, but everything started to really get really pricey here and lack of housing and everything else. We used to say, yeah, come on in. It's super cheap to live here, and it's the money's good. And now I can't say nothing about that. It's super expensive to live here, and you're probably not going to find a place. So they're like, well, we're not coming unless you guarantee us something. I can't do that. So we're just struggling. And they got I went to you guys on this side. Sean Lawson from just kind of wrote up a big thing to us saying about their perspective in the last 7 years, what they've been dealing with there, and everything about what's going on, the need for this, and they're selling on the island over 2 units a week, full-time units, and have nowhere to tell them where to go. Just they're buying them. They either people want to retire, or it's the working class, starting that off or coming to town. I've had several contractors in town ask me too, hey, you got a place, I need these guys to come work for me. I'm like, no, can't do it. But so they're losing guys. So they're falling behind. And then the young families, they're can't afford to get into the market right now. And so, they're getting into something, get started, and maybe see how it goes. Maybe they can upgrade down the road. And then for a retirement, retired community is a lot of people are stepping back and just want to live 6 months here and with nice weather and head south or wherever they want to go. Kind of like what everybody love to do, I guess. And so I just been getting like numerous calls. So basically, I thought my property was a good spot because I'm secluded. It's safe. It's very quiet. I'm set way back from the road, so you can't see it. Can't even see it out of my own home. Everything's gated and scared and stuff like that. So I thought this would be a good little training for people to bring in. So that's basically all I'm trying to do. So,
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm wondering, once folks get to see the printouts, if you can just leave them behind. We'll
yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if anybody on the board has any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. I'd like to thank you for your presentation. We'll make sure to take your presentation to an account when the decision comes. Thank you. Have a good one. Did you start your construction company when you were 12 then? Is that what's going on? Or? Yeah. All right. Okay, the next item up is item 6A. It's correspondence for action. It has to do with the North Island College, and I don't actually know who's speaking to it. So, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's okay. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, so North Island College has reached out. They have shared their Build 2026 North Island College strategy plan and working together. So they did present to the board about a year ago. So just opened up another offer to present again to the board and provide an update if the board so wishes.
Director Beckett, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a very comprehensive report, and I would agree wholeheartedly that it would be advantageous if they were to come and do a verbal report so that we can key in on some of their points, especially as it relates to our region and our communities. So that being said, I would make the motion the board of directors invites North Island College representatives to update the board on the progress the college has made on initiatives set out in the two plans.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Right. Thank you, Director Cole. Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item B, which is the AVICC item regarding allowing members of the board to attend the Coastal Marine Strategy online information session on September 19th. I might be inclined just to go to a motion on this if we're okay. Director Cote, go ahead.
So I would make the motion. You can see it. That the board of directors authorize all interested directors to attend the Coastal Marine Strategy online information session on September 19th, 2022.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cole. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Your motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us to correspondence for information. There's only two items. There's one from the Island Coastal Economic Trust and one regarding FireSmart. No one wants to pull anything out. We can just have a motion to receive. Thank you, Director Cole, seconded by Director Beckett. Okay, no comments. Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Your motion carried. Great, thank you. And then that brings us to request for decisions and bylaws. Item 8A is regarding board remuneration and expenses. I believe Terry is going to be taking us through that. Please go ahead.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So earlier this year, the board struck a committee to review the board remuneration, expenses, and benefits. The committee members are Shelley Crest, Ken McCrae, and Stefan Ockman. The members are on Zoom today. Actually, I don't believe Stefan is, but Ken and Shelley are here. If there's any questions that you guys would like answered, however, I'll provide the brief introduction to the report. So part of the committee's duties, they reviewed and interviewed existing board members, reviewed other regional district bylaws, as well as our member municipalities. And out of all the discussion, we helped draft the report there's Stefan, and have come up with the recommendations and a new bylaw for adoption today. So happy to assist in answering any questions and I think that is all for now.
Okay, before we get to any motions, does anyone have any comments or questions? Questions specifically for the Board Remuneration Committee? Director McNabb, go ahead.
So I'd like to thank you all for the work that it took to put this together. I know it's not an easy thing to make that kind of determination. I personally think that the board of the future is really, the work is underestimated. And I think that I guess there will be an opportunity in days to come to look at board remuneration again. But from having spent the last 3 terms on the board, I know what the level of work is and the level of responsibility, particularly the level of responsibility. And in today's world, with the impact of the internet, there's really no relief. In days gone by, when I was on city council, we went to a city council meeting and we went home, and that was pretty much the end of it. But in today's world, there really is no end. So you're seeing either by Facebook, by online chats, by emails, continual critiquing of any decision that is to be made, has been made, will be made someday, and direct impact on the directors that are sitting. So I think it needs to be looked at in that light, that it's not the job it used to be, and it's going to be a more complicated and more invasive job in the future. And I thank you again for everything that you've done, and I hope that that the board will see it as progressive. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, thank you to the committee that brought this forward. I agree with what Director McNabb has said. The job is changing all the time. There's not really anything in here for education. We talk about board meetings and agendas. There was a comment I heard recently of, the city. I went to the training session or information session that the city and regional district and school board trustees put on, and talked about an agenda being like 150 to 300 pages, but it didn't say anything about the reports that were that many pages, and the terminology that you're subjected to find out and try to remember. There's a lot of work that regional directors are facing these days, and it's only growing with the downloads from the province, with expansion on all of our services. It's an amazing amount of work, and I really want to stress that we want good people coming here, and we want to be able to compensate them. And I think that's a fair thing to do. I'm hearing on the news lately that mayors' councils are increasing their wages to mirror what the job actually entails. So would have liked to have seen a better proposal here, but this is what came forward. And thank you for doing the work in the past. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Cote. Are there any other comments? If not, I think I'm going to be the one to move this, make it easy. Dr. Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a comment about child and family care on the bylaw. I'm on page 90. I like to think that part of my discussion had something to do with this. But I just have a question with the changes, because it says to cover meetings. Does that include if it's conventions, out of town stuff as well?
My understanding is yes, it would be for time spent actually in meetings or conventions, those types of things. If you have full-time daycare, it wouldn't be a full-time credit for the whole month. It would have to be proportional to how many hours are actually in meetings, and it's not for like prep time. That would still be outside of it, but it would be for time actually spent at meetings, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. I just asked because if it is like a convention where you have to be away, sometimes you're looking for overnight, and I'm just and that can be a little bit more cumbersome. I'm not trying to get nitpicky here, but just that's my thought process of, and especially if you have kids in school, you're not necessarily taking them with you if there was childcare at a convention. Just a thought. I know we can't fix everything, but thank you.
Okay, I have Director Bodnar and then back to Director McNabb.
Thank you. I didn't think that I'd have the opportunity to share something, but since this is the way it's going, I would like to say that if you're drawing in new directors and whatnot, it's really important that they have support and have some kind of a knowledge about the political field, because it is, you know, me coming into this for this 4 years, I feel like I've always been playing catch up, and because we didn't have the training at the very beginning, and now it's just been a catch up game. I haven't have any regrets, but I think though to draw other people in to be directors, there has to be some kind of support somewhere right at the beginning, regardless of whether there's a by-election or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bodnar. Director McNabb.
So just looking at that childcare thing, I kind of twigged on this technology thing. I had thought about it before, but during COVID, we were all stuck with our iPads, and I found it impossible to chair a meeting with an iPad. And so I had to go out and purchase a desktop and then have the iPad or 2 iPads in order to be able to chair. So I think there should be some opportunity for that consideration. I guess the board could actually make that determination whether or not that expense would be applicable in the future. But we may run through this sort of pandemic thing again with one disease or another, and or the continuance of COVID. But it is something that needs to be kind of considered and worded. I think that if the necessity comes up, that the board would approve or disapprove of technology advancement.
I just can't help but corroborate what you had said, Director McNabb. It was night and day when you upgraded to a desktop. Just the amount of frustration I could see just kind of went down quite a bit. And yeah, it is much harder to use an iPad to connect into meetings or a phone unless you have multiple devices going. And even then, it's not ideal. So I think that's something that we can take into account moving forward as a board. And I think that works. So unless there are any other comments, I thought I'd just have a last comment here and move in. Terry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that we didn't really talk about the chairing component of a meeting, but we did change the technology section to state that the directors will be given an option of a laptop or an iPad, because there's many people who are not chairing meetings that are preferring to work zooming off a laptop instead of an iPad. So we did make that small change in the language, but it doesn't completely address what Director McNabb is talking about in the chairing of a meeting. But I agree that it would be easier just to deal with that at the board table when it occurs.
All right, thank you for that. So just as a last comment, I think I've been saying this the longest out of everyone. I come from a First Nation that has full-time members of council. We get paid on a salary basis, and that's probably 80% of the reason that we've been successful as a nation, is being able to have people having their hands on the things that our nation needs to do in order to be successful. Good governance is the basis of good economy, because we need to be able to make solid decisions that are stable over time. And then when I look at everything that we've been able to achieve at the regional district, it surprises me, given how much, especially regional district directors, like EA directors, have to do in relation to their own communities. I can't speak to municipalities. I don't have that experience, but I do know that it's on kettle of fish as well. So I am not up for election in a couple of months, so I can say this outright. Local government doesn't get paid enough to do and deal with everything that you do. Period. End of sentence. I have no problem putting these forward. And I think this is something that we need to think on, because remuneration is part of it. The use of time is part of it. The ability for us to have hybrid meetings means that our West Coast directors show up more often now. Photo day notwithstanding. I also think that the move from 3-year to 4-year terms of office have really given many of our experienced members of government pause, because what Director McNabb has stated and others have stated, it doesn't stop now. It never stops now. You always have something to do, something to deal with, something to read, phone conversations to have, email conversations to have, getting tagged on AV chatterbox and so on and so forth. That's always fun. I don't have to deal with it to the same degree. And when you do, I can see the pressure that you deal with. And that can be dissuading for a lot of people who contribute very well to this group or could in the future. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to make it a huge soapbox, but I am going to move each of these, mostly because I think it's probably the best, but I do need a seconder. So I'll move that the Alberni-Clyde Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw cited as Board Remuneration Expenses and Benefits Bylaw number A1090, 2022. Seconded by Director McNabb. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. I will now move that the Alberni-Clyde Regional District Board of Directors give second reading to bylaw cited as Board Remuneration Expenses and Benefits Bylaw number A1090, 2022. Seconded by Director Beck. Comments? Seeing none, all those, Director Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to say that this is going to be coming into effect, because I don't think we talked about it after the election,
Yes,
just to make that clear.
Yes,
It'll be to
that's,
the new board.
yeah, that's it. Like that's stricken from the record. No, that's an important reminder, Director Shannon. Thank you. This is a recommendation. We are making the decision not necessarily for ourselves, but for future government. And really, the way that this is all set up, this is the only way to do it. Honestly, the province should be stepping in and determining these things based on a modern formula. But me and Mayor Tate from SIG will have to deal with that in the future. I think she's the one who commented on that. Okay, so I was in comments. So unless there are any further comments, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Third is that the Alberni-Clyde Regional District Board of Directors gives third reading to bylaw cited as Board Remuneration Expenses and Benefits Bylaw number A1090, 2022, seconded by Director Roberts. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And second to last, that the Alberni-Clyde Regional District Board of Directors adopt bylaw cited as Board Remuneration Expenses and Benefits Bylaw number A1090, 2022. Thank you, Director Cole. Seconded. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. And lastly, that the Alberni-Clyde Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to develop a committee following the 2022 local government elections to develop ideas to encourage diversity and participation in the region. Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? Really like this one. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, now through that, we'll get into an easy one, a discussion on the West Coast Multiplex. I can't remember who's doing. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so the report in front of you is a report that I think many of our West Coast committees or communities have also been receiving. Went through the Tofino and to Ucluelet. So I just wanted to, as the report drafter, just state that the West Coast Multiplex Committee or Society has had regular meetings with us as staff. Every other month, I'm out west meeting with my counterparts, and the society did meet with us on a few occasions just to provide us at a staff level some updates on where they were going, but also just to bounce ideas off of the group to understand how it is that they can help build consensus. And I think one of the challenges that we've seen in the West, and I am quite new to this, haven't quite done a year, so based on my observation, is that everyone seems to have a bit of their own plan. The society is not attached to any one government and is trying to herd cats, so to speak, with the best of intentions and a lot of volunteer time. And so the recommendation that's in this report is one that the society did not draft, but after having conversations with Samantha Hackett, I can say that it is one that is appreciated, in that it's a motion to, one, take a bit of a step back and acknowledge all the work that has been done, but also create some space so that all the communities on the West Coast, First Nations and non, treaty and non, can start that conversation as a group with intent. And because it's been, I think, close to 20 years that the concept has been there, and it's time to do that. And so the recommendation is just saying, hey, let's talk about where your community intends to go. If there were going to be any recreation complex or amenity, where would it be in your community? If we were to partner, what would that partnership look like, and what parcel of land best suits the interest of the community? And so it's really to try and take that front step into coordination of dialogue and revisioning. The resolution also aims to not disenfranchise a very important group of volunteers who make up the society that are well connected, have good vision, and can really still add a lot of value to the discussion ahead. So the intent here is really to do just that, is to take a step back, not say no to an MOU, but say, you know what, we want to take an opportunity to rediscuss the elements of it. We want to talk about what those priorities are, and where we can partner. We want to make sure that we're developing that partnership as a group of governments together. And I'm relatively certain when I say that I don't think any one of the governments on the West Coast have actually made the multiplex a priority, and yet discussions are taking place. And so, from my perspective, it just simply means that it was never an overt objective of the group. And so, the regional district is well positioned to do just that and to coordinate those interests. Every community is part of the federation, and so the resolutions that are there help set that stage and help create that intent, and also direct us to bring back the conversation appropriately to the new board for a 2023 strategic plan. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
All right, let's open it up for discussion. So to Director Steer, please go ahead, and then Director Roberts.
Thank you. And I appreciate the comments, Daniel. They're summarized very accurately. We just had a District Tofino council meeting yesterday, and our recommendation that was passed is very similar to the one that's been crafted here. And there were other reasons for Tofino to recraft and have a recommendation very similar. One of the important ones was that to move forward with that memorandum of understanding would have compromised through our strategic plan, it compromised projects that were already underway. And so that was one of the considerations. But I think there were two factors that I think that all of council to bring forward was the importance of recreation in general. So that was the guiding umbrella. We recognize the importance of having these types of facilities and opportunities, not just for youth, but for all of community and the region were paramount. And that's why the final recommendation for Tofino, very similarly crafted, was that we meet with the regional governments to discuss regional recreational plans, priorities, and opportunities. So I will very much support the recommendation that has been drafted here for the ACRD to move forward.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have Directors Robert and then Director Cole. Roberts, sorry.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thanks, Mr. Salen, for your comments. Much appreciated. It's been a difficult time to get involved with this completely because of the lack of appreciation, I think, from other local governments, and really to get it clarified within our own community or the regional district that, looking at this as a renewed stakeholder perhaps in this program, I think it's extremely worthwhile. And I'm happy to make that recommendation as well.
Okay, we have three here, so we'll let Director Cole go first, and then we'll come back to you. Director Cole, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. We made a recommendation that our council direct staff to advise the West Coast Multiplex Society that UCOOL may consider signing an updated memorandum of understanding upon renewed stakeholder consultation in the determination of regional recreational priorities and affirmation of local and regional support through the multiplex facility.
Okay, thank you for the update. Director Roberts, do we want to go through these motions then?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Recommendation that the ACRD Board of Directors advise the West Coast Multiplex Society that the ACRD may consider signing an updated memorandum of understanding MOU upon renewed stakeholder consultation in the determination of the regional recreation priorities for the West Coast.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cole. Any comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Further, that the ACRD Board direct staff to engage with West Coast communities to determine the preferred process for dialogue regarding the establishment of recreational facility priorities and possible facility locations, and staff be directed to report to the board on this issue to the re-establishment of strategic priorities in 2023.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried.
And finally, that the ACRD board direct staff to work with the West Coast Multiplex Society to identify opportunities for ongoing collaboration as we take time to re-engage interested parties and communities regarding the initiative.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, that brings us to item 8C, which is a request for decision regarding, it's the deferred item from before. So I believe that this is Alex. Are you, oh no, you're on the screen. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Chair Jack. So staff are recommending that a notice on title be placed on a property located at 325 Banfield Road in accordance with the board's notice on title procedures. The notice on the property title would indicate that there is an outstanding building safety concern relating to a 2006 building permit that was not finalized by a previous property owner. The contravention specifically relates to finishing and occupying the structure without the required inspections and without addressing concerns that were raised by the building inspector, as well as a lack of information about adequate on-site sewage disposal facilities at the site. The applicants have not provided any correspondence to the regional district regarding sewage disposal facilities, and Island Health has been following up on this file as well with respect to those concerns. So as you note, Chair Jack that this request for decision was deferred from the July board meeting as the property owner had identified that they would be bringing forward new information. But at this point, staff had not received anything from the property owner, and we recommend that the board proceed with placing the notice on title. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Cote and then Director Becker.
Thank you. It seems peculiar to me that without sewage disposal system in place, we could actually look at a building permit being approved. Is that not part of the process?
Happy to answer that. So the building permit application process requires that a system design be submitted from an on-site wastewater professional, and that a septic filing be filed with Island Health. All of that work was done when the permit was issued in 2006. What we don't have is the final confirmation that it has been installed by the wastewater professional and that it's operating in accordance with the Island Health regulations. That's the missing piece of information that we have, but it is typical for us to issue a building permit with a septic design and a assurance that it will be installed. Hopefully that answers your question.
Sorry, not exactly. I'm wondering why it was approved then. I realize that that's the process, but there should be a timeline attached to that and follow up. It's a matter of quite a few years here that nothing was completed. Is there not a move-in approval for someone to actually move into a property that with the building permit? So I'm not sure I understand this fully. Thank you.
Yeah, so we do have an occupancy permit process that is built into the building permit inspection process. And what the applicant had done when they started construction is that they did phone the building inspector at the time and had a few inspections were done, but then the correspondence dropped off, and it appears that the property owner at the time finished the structure and then moved in without the required final inspections and without the occupancy permit as well. And then following that, there has been a series of property ownership changes that have resulted in a lack of focus on finalizing the permit. And I think what we're trying to do now is we're more engaged in the process, and we're trying to get the notice registered so that this won't happen in the future. And we're engaged with the current property owner who we hope will be taking real steps to bring it into compliance. But that's basically how we got to this point, and what we need is the final inspections from the building inspector in order to issue the occupancy permit, and the assurance that the on-site sewage disposal system has been installed and is operating in accordance with what Island Health wants to see.
One final follow-up, please. Is there any recourse that we can do since there is no occupancy permit and there's people living there? So is there any recourse? Thanks.
The board does have the option to proceed with legal action on in the case where we have a building that is in contravention of the ACRD building bylaw. If that's something that the board would like direct staff to investigate, we'd be happy to do that and bring a report back to the board. I would highlight that the notice on title procedure doesn't preclude the future process to proceed with legal action. Both steps can occur, and I do feel that the notice on title process allows us to take one step towards compliance, and if we don't get any traction with the current property owner, there are additional steps that the board can take.
Did you want to jump in, Daniel? And then we'll go to Bob really quick. He's been very patient.
Thank you, and sorry, Bob. Just to echo what Alex has said, is that anything beyond the recommended action that's in this report here really is the subject of an in-camera meeting. And so I would not encourage the board to have that discussion of further steps in this forum.
Okay, Director Beckett, go ahead.
Thank you. That makes it a little more difficult for me to, to speak my mind on this matter. I think Director Cote was going in the direction that I would have followed up with, and perhaps been a bit more pointed. But I will take your counsel into due consideration, sir. I would like to make the motion and then a short comment then, please. So I'll make the motion. The Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors resolve to register a notice on title to Lot 2, Section 20, Township 1, Barclay Land District, VIP 20011-325 Banfield Road, as per Section 57 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Kristen and Dr. Johnson. And
in
comment,
follow-up, I do believe this matter should go to an in-camera meeting for appropriate follow-up.
You can make that resolution afterwards as well. Great. So on this resolution, any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried.
So when you say resolution, do you mean a resolution or a motion?
It's a motion when it's not passed. It's a resolution when it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may, so just, I think the wording would be to further defer the matter to an in-camera discussion.
I would like to make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Steer. Okay, all of those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item D, a resolution regarding a special board of directors meeting. Director McNabb, go ahead.
I'd move that the quarterly meeting of the electoral areas meeting scheduled for Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. in the Regional District Boardroom and via Zoom be canceled.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Shannon. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And being as we all can't be in one room at once, twice, that the ACRD Board of Directors call a special board meeting, or a Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. in the Regional District Board Room at 3008 Fifth Avenue in Port Alberni, BC, and via Zoom in order to consider a large number of planning applications.
Thanks, Alex. Seconded by Director Roberts. Oh, great. Any further comment? Yeah, it was mentioned to me from our CAO that we have a dearth of planning matters to get through. So I figured, I guess it's not a dearth, but it's pretty close. That being said, it's important that we allocate enough time to those discussions, especially since they're the most fiddly. That being said, unless there are any further comments, all those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item E. And I believe, Michael, you're up, right? So do you want to stand at the podium or just sit where Mike or Alex would sit? Up to you. Podium's fine? Oh, it's a presentation. Of course. Sorry, I forgot. Okay. I'm going to take this time to go grab a coffee. Oh, no, there's no coffee. I'll just have some more. We can make some. A coffee would be good if we just make a new pot or dive into the good dark roasts. I don't know. I know what the staff are up to. I miss the gavel, honestly. I guess not many people remember the old Glen Wong days, but Tony's not here, so there'd be no. Glenn and Tony going head to head all the time. Okay, thanks, Michael, for setting that up. So please, at your leisure, please go ahead.
Thanks for having me today. I've been with the ACRD for just under 2 years now, and this is the first meeting I've been able to provide to everybody in person. So it's nice to see your faces and meet some of you in person for the first time. So today, I think I have the next 6 reports, and the first 3 all revolve around Maple Hurst Park and trails. So initially, we're going to go into our park management plan that our consultant Karen Albert has prepared, and she'll provide a quick update of any changes from the COW meeting till now. And then I'm going to go over our 3 reports. The first one's going to be on access initiatives. The second one will be on operational and First Nation initiatives. And the third one is park expansion and governance. And then I'll go into a little bit more detail on those at the time and go into the recommendations. But right now I'll hand it over to Karen, who I believe is joined, and she can provide an update.
Yep, please go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
All loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back here today with the final park management plan. The draft was presented to you at your July 29th committee of the whole meeting. And then shortly after that, we posted it on the website for public comment, and also was referred to the First Nations, the Hapachesed and the Sishat. We received 2 public comments, and they had some very helpful comments, generally an appreciation for the planning process and for engaging the public and promoting discussions on the park and the trail network. Both submissions encouraged the ACRD to seek to protect the trail network on the adjacent Crown lands by working with the province to extend the park. Both submissions were also very appreciative of the goal to support volunteer efforts in the park. One of the submissions expressed preference for formalizing access points from Kitsaxis Road, as that would not require bridge construction. And there was support for long-term connections in the longer term to other community trails. The submissions provide some additional information on the ecosystem in the park and park values, which were included in the final draft. Yeah, and beyond those 2 public comments, the ACRD also received a comment from the Sishat in the form of a request to form a working group to continue working with the ACRD on this and on the park management, on implementing the park management plan, and in particular considering ways to inform the public and the users about First Nations cultural practices and languages, and showing greater appreciation for those through park development, and ways to recognize that in the park development process. So overall, the process was I would say was very successful. The online survey generated 251 responses. I conducted some stakeholder interviews, discussions with the First Nations, an open house, which shared the main themes from the survey. So we reported back out to the public what the main themes what came out of the survey, and then checked in on preferred access points to the park, asked for priorities over the coming years from the participants. And all that information was also posted online, so people who were not able to come to the open house were able to make submissions afterwards. So overall, the process generated a lot of participation, discussion. Myself and the ACRD staff learned a lot about the park use, which a process like that is really, this is really helpful for that. And get a better understanding of the preferences, wishes of the neighbors, stakeholders, First Nations, and the general public and park visitors. I want to acknowledge that there's always trade-offs. Not everyone will always agree on what needs to be done or what a priority is. I believe that where the views diverged the park management strikes a good balance to try and address the interests and key concerns of key parties. The context and background identified in the park management plan will be there as a long-term reference for the ACID, and the values, the vision, goals, and actions will help direct priorities and allocation of resources over the coming years. So yeah, I'm really happy to have had this opportunity to work on this project. It's been really a lot of fun, I have to say. And I was really impressed by the input we received and the dedication of the people who are the park users, and all the appreciation for the park by both the park users, but also the neighbors who live around the park. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or hand it over to Michael.
All right, thank you for that. So it looks like item E has 2 motions attached to it. So as long as we can remember that. Please go ahead, Michael.
If you don't mind, I'd say if there's any questions specifically to the plan and its contents, now's the time to engage with Karen, and we'll dive into the recommendations after.
Dr. Corbeil, please go ahead.
If I could ask, we've got a map up on the wall here, and the Maplehurst Park is obviously identified with a yellow boundary. What is the light green and what does the black boundary represent? What is Crown land? What is private land? Can you explain a little bit of that for me, please?
Yeah, the yellow boundary is a park, as you point out. The light green is a woodlot license that was awarded a number of years ago to the tenure holder who, as a trade-off for the expansion into an existing woodlot by the Alberni Regional Airport. And the not shaded area below that light green area is Crown land, and currently is not under tenure. And both areas, the tenured area that has a woodlot and the untenured Crown land, have recreational trails on them that extend into Maplehurst Park. And the Maplehurst trails, and the park plan explains that a little bit, known to the public, extend is the larger trail system generally. The black boundary, I believe, are your electoral area. No, they're not entirely your electoral area boundaries. I mean, that might be a district lot boundary.
I'll step in here, and yeah, the black boundary is the Crown land boundaries are for the parcels there, and the electoral area boundaries are Cherry Creek is just to the west of our park and goes up here and runs straight up through the woodlot and continuing it up. Beaufort is the northwest corner here, which is most of the woodlot area. And then Beaver Creek is the large Crown land section and the residential on below. And I should mention that I believe the city is the very small corner right here.
Dr. Bodner, go ahead.
Thank you, Michael and Karen. This started out to be just a little thing. Let's deal with what's happening at the Willow Rose so these people have a place to park and the neighbors are not inconvenienced. And now it has turned into a huge expansion of this park and a lot more notice, which is great. However, what I wanted to know is in the information area, it says putting in a parking lot at to help the end of Willow Road would be on high ground. Where is there high ground on Willow Road?
Yeah, that might be a Michael question. Michael did have a surveyor out to review the potential areas for a parking lot at the end of Willow Road.
So this is getting into the details of the access a bit more, but this is our initial design of the Willow Road access. So currently this is the edge of the pavement. right there. And this here is the large drainage that runs beside Willow Road. These straight lines are the Ministry of Transportation road right-of-way boundaries. There are 2 road right-of-ways that T. So because of these drainages, this is a very wet, tightly confined space here. And the proposal is to establish a connection to higher ground where there's ground more suitable for constructing a parking lot.
And how big would the parking lot be?
I think we used a space of 5.5 meters per space here. I don't have the full area in front of me, but it's essentially a 12 space parking lot, which provides enough room for people to turn around.
That would certainly be helpful to the people there on Willow Road for sure. And the other question I wanted to ask about, because it's part of this, is having Cherry Creek access. And I think that's really important since Community Works parts from Cherry Creek is $250,000. I think that they should be able, there should be a second access from Cherry Creek to the park as well. And I just like to acknowledge all the work that you've already done and Karen done on this. It's turned out to be a much bigger thing than what I think that I had anticipated. And it's nice to see that there is something in the works for Willow Road.
So I'd like to just take a quick step back before I dive into the access resolutions there. So I'm going to echo a bit of what Karen had said about the planning process and our public engagement. There's a lot of really passionate people about this area who love their parks and trails and natural areas. So we received a lot of public engagement with various different ideas and priorities. So I think the plan does a fantastic job of collecting that information, provided everybody an opportunity to voice their concerns and ideas. And we have that as a public document to reference going forward for how we manage the park over the next 10 to 20 years. And I would like to say that this park was developed through the Maplehurst subdivision process over 100 years ago. That subdivision never went ahead, but the park remained. And it has essentially been not managed. It's been a level of service 4, so it's grown organically through volunteer resources and local community groups taking the initiative to make trail improvements as they see fit. But the ACRD has not made the improvements of assets our priority. So essentially, we're going from a level 4 level of service where we don't manage this property to a level 3, where we appreciate what's there now. We want to maintain a natural area for public use, but there are still assets that we're trying to maintain. Safety inspections to make sure that it's a safe public space for public use. So these recommendations and the reports here, they kind of acknowledge the resources that the ACRD has available to us. They are achievable things that we can do without significant increases to resources for the park services that we need to operate them. And also they use our resources to produce the greatest amount of public benefit from staff as the staff perspective sees. So I'd also like to mention that there are a number of other initiatives within the management plan that aren't initiatives within these reports. And that's not saying that they can't become initiatives at a later date. It's just there as a reference as we move forward. So if there are initiatives down the road that we would like to pursue, pursuing with these ones, definitely don't rule out those at a later date. So I will kind of dive a bit deeper into our map here. So we spoke on Willow Road already, and then Director Bodner mentioned the Strathcona street accesses and So we investigated 7 accesses in total. I'm going to go counterclockwise here. So we spoke on Willow Road, and that's our short-term proposal and the first recommendation. The other accesses we looked at was Strathcona Street. I really appreciate or like this access. There's sufficient room for parking, but the limiting factor was that the floodplain of Conceptus Creek was really large and not insurmountable, but the span of a bridge to cross it, plus some boardwalks to accommodate the floodplain, you know, it would have seen a project greater than 800,000. So it didn't really achieve our, you know, achievable component that we were looking for. So I don't see that as an initiative that we can pursue at this time. Strathcona Street, it would require 2 creek crossings, which again, the creek crossings are the expensive point. So it's not something that we can quite pursue at this time. And this area isn't really conducive to a parking area as well. So the second recommendation that we mentioned was this Cali Road, West Road access here. This creek access crossing is most preferable. We walked in with an engineer and identified this space as, you know, a real small or short span that we could put in a timber frame or a small aluminum structure across relatively easily in comparison to the other options. There's an existing trail through this woodlot crown and tenure area that goes down to the park. The infrastructure will all be confined within the park to the bridge, which is another positive. This area is not very densely populated, so it could accommodate larger parking areas with without, you know, upsetting close dense neighbors or whatnot. We've had some initial conversations with the woodlot tenure holder, and you know, I think that there is a potential for a partnership to be obtained and, you know, achieve some common goals and potentially have, you know, recreation values within this section, as well as, you know, an operating woodlot tenure through just communication and partnering on some initiatives. But it would take, you know, a process of an application to the province, as well as engagement with First Nations, woodlot tenure holder, and other stakeholders as well. So that's why it's tabled as a medium-term initiative. Just to keep going around, we looked at the Best Road access here. So we'll speak a bit more about this in the governance section later, but you know, this is within the Beaufort area. Beaufort doesn't have a community park service. So we know there's no natural fit there unless we reorder some governance to accommodate it, which, you know, would be a longer term project. And, you know, I'm unsure if the benefits of these trails would necessitate that. So going further down to the Crown Land section in Beaver Creek here, these 2 accesses were heavily discussed. I think the main point here is that if we were to have an asset this far away from our park and that's servicing our park, we would want to ensure that there's a connection that we own and operated between them. We're unsure what the future development is or could be for the Crown Land in this large section between the park and potential parking lot. So it is more tabled as a park expansion, a larger conversation, and I'll discuss that a bit later on the third report resolution. But right now, these 2 initiatives that the first 2 resolutions look at, Willow Road #1 and Cali Road, are the staff recommendation to pursue.
Thank you. Director McNabb.
So my first vision of this was kind of the paint by numbers drawing, and what we ended up with was a Monet. So I want to get back to the paint by numbers part of it, and that's getting the parking area at least temporarily solved on Willow Road. And I think one of the main criteria from there is making sure that we get these trails under our control on the Section 57 kind of approach, so that we can make decisions on the long-term access and like the Cali Road access particularly, and be able to ensure that the trails are going to be there to connect the access to our public roads. So I would move that the Alberni-Claycourt Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to apply for a license of occupation and a nominal rent 10-year lease with the province of British Columbia for a parking area facility within the Ministry of Transport right-of-way and Crown lands at the end of Willow Road. And I would like to suggest along with that is that we make it bigger than the footprint that we want to have. So we've got some opportunity to expand it at some point.
I think that can be taken as a directive. I think that's well understood. Yeah. Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Any further comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a question. In addition to the plan for the parking, is there also a plan with the Ministry of Transportation for signage to not park by the residences then on Willow Road, or to deter that and it's only the public parking area? You know what I mean?
So yeah, I've met with the Ministry of Transportation a number of times there. I think if we had a parking facility, it would be easy to direct people where to appropriately park. Currently, without it, the Ministry of Transportation hasn't been too willing to allow us to direct people since we don't own any of the parking facilities.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And I would move that the Alberni-Claycourt Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to prepare a project plan for establishing a second park access in Cherry Creek. And I guess my comments with regards to the trails kind of fits into that.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a second? Thank you, Director Corbin. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us into item F, which is the park management plan regarding operations. So Michael, please go ahead. And Dr. McNabb, if you could take over, I can't hold it anymore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this next report revolves around operations, and essentially it is establishing best management practices to a level of service level 3, which would be initiating some wayfinding signage, some interpretive signage, maintaining a natural park space, and there's a few lists of initiatives within the park, but it's essentially everything that's within best management practices for our level 3 service, which we've discussed in the past. So the second component of this report is our discussions with local First Nations that we had during the creation of this report. 2 initiatives that came out of that was a partnership for interpretive signage within the parks, as well as potential of going through a renaming process. So as I mentioned before, Maplehurst was the name of a subdivision over 100 years ago that everyone had. I don't think the community has great attachment to the name Maplehurst for this park. And I think this would be a good opportunity to establish a procedure for naming of our parks, and could create a new chapter for going forward with this park.
Okay, now all the thousands of questions off the floor. Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I received quite a number of emails regarding the preservation of the Maplehurst Park. People were very much in favor of keeping it, read the report, and definitely support the operations and what's been put forward. That's it. Thanks.
Director Corbeil.
Thank you, John. If I could, I think the emails are more, at least the ones I'm seeing, are talking about the expansion of the Maplehurst Park into the Crown portion. And I wonder if if this order is not a little bit backwards, that we're going to discuss or make a vote on whether or not we accept the Maplehurst Park plan, but then later on, we're going to talk about whether or not we should be expanding into the Crown lands. And I've walked this trail for years. And as I look at the map, I realize a lot of the time I was not within the Maplehurst Park. I was in some Crown land. So I guess my question is this the cart for the horse, that we're going to accept the park plan and potentially not pursue expansion into the Crown lands?
I guess I could say that the management plan kind of establishes our level of service and what we want to do within our park boundaries. And then the expansion of that, we discussed the expansion into the Crown Land Trails would just be an expansion of how we manage our park beyond those boundaries too. So I think it does go hand in hand with each other.
Okay, I've heard and saw that people really want to keep this park in a natural form. And I think on a budgetary basis, that's good, because it's a Cherry Creek Park and there's not a lot of money there to be creating something of provincial standards or anything like that. So I also really like the idea of both Tishat and Hepetchisset First Nation and other nations that maybe have utilized that area. I mean, not a historian, but I think that in times gone by, centuries gone by, that there were other nations involved in the sort of Alberni Basin. And it would be kind of interesting to be able to tie that in, but certainly Tishat and Hepetchisset, I think I've got a great deal to add to the experience of that park. So have we got anybody else that wants to speak, or somebody would like to make a motion? Director Wagner? And a seconder. Second. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? It's carried.
That I'd like to move that the Alberni Clayport Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to incorporate operational action items into the work plan and the 2023 Cherry Creek Community Park Service Financial Plan.
Seconder? Johnson. So I'll turn the chair back to Chair Jack, but and just recognize that Hawaiian just donated $400,000 to this project.
Okay. It used to live in Cherry Creek, so I guess that makes sense. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions?
I was just the third recommendation.
Oh, I haven't. We still have to do the vote on the second one. Hey, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried, I think. All right, and
Move that the Alberni Clayport Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to continue to work with the Shuswap First Nation and Hepetchisset First Nation around appropriate park signage and name for Maplehurst Park.
thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Corgill. Comments? Great. Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right. That brings us to item G. Sorry, Director Cote, go ahead.
Should there not be another motion then that staff investigate expansion of the park at this time, or should we?
Oh, that's item G.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but please go ahead, Michael. Oh, Dr. Roberts, did you have a comment? Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Just a general question, the park plan, does that include signage for direction and points of interest and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it'll include a wayfinding signage and as well as interpretive signage. And I should mention that, if our management is only within Maplehurst Park, it would be wayfinding signage up to the park border and within, but we wouldn't include it if we do not choose to expand to Crownland Trails outside the park.
All right, thank you. And with that, that sounds like a good segue into the next item. So please take it away.
Thank you. So the last report on Maplehurst Park is expansion and governance. So it was a key theme while preparing the park management plan. And I think many of you have seen the letters that come in for this board as late items. There's some desire for the ACRD to expand our management of Maplehurst Park into the Crown Land Trails to preserve those recreational values within the Crown Lands. I would like to note, because there is, because of the location of this park, there's governance issues within that, where we've gone over this a bit before, but just to reiterate that the bottom half of these Crown Land Trails are within Beaver Creek electoral area. These top trails here are within the Beaufort electoral area, and then these trails here are within the Cherry Creek electoral area. So the current governance structure would be that the local park service would fund the operations, maintenance, and asset replacement of any of our assets within those electoral areas. If the board were pursuing expansion, and the expansion process would not be our control. The first step would be for Section 57 to the province, and that would provide us with the ability to operate those trails. We would essentially treat them as our own trails like we would within the park. But it would not provide, protection, I suppose you'd say, over the forestry industry. And this entire Crownland section is, I'm not a forester, so I might not use the right terminology here, but the way it's explained to me is, it's the calculation for allowable cuts. So when the province divides their allowable cut, this area is used for that calculation, and it's not protected for recreational purposes at the moment. And if we were to pursue Section 57 or potentially if Section 56, that would not remove that from the province's allowable cut. It would just be an initiative to work together, and we have to sit at the table to discuss maintaining recreational values. But it would take additional costs for us to operate, maintain, and replace assets to do that. So. I'm sure there's a few questions on this.
Director Ebb, then Cote, then Bob.
So, I think it's important that we do that. The success at the end of the day, I guess, is going to be up to the provincial government, but trying to achieve that is going to reduce the impact and requirement of the parking areas on particularly Willow Road or wherever else we decide that we might want to try to put another parking area. So right now, people are parking on Cowley, they're parking on Consexus, and they're parking on, it's the road down at the end there. It was in that picture. Not really Holly. There isn't actually a trail on Holly, but it, so if it may be even on Strathcona, they might be parking and walking in through that way. So it is reducing an impact on that parking area, which is highly problematic and still will be even with 12 parking spaces. You go out there on a good day, there's 25 cars. So it's, I think the trails are a neat thing. And I think the cost of both doing it and maintaining it are going to be minimal to those districts. So it's, you can't reproduce it if you don't have it. So we need it.
Thank you. Next up, I have Directors Cote, Bodnar, and then Corbeil. Did I miss anyone? Shannon. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, a question about the ownership or the liability for these trails. So would this be similar to the trails that we have agreements with the Ministry of Transportation and the Mosaic for trails in Sprout Lake? And also would it be similar to the trails, the inlet trail that we have an agreement with Mosaic? Thank you.
So I'd say that they are different than those because this would be a Section 57, which is a provincial permit with BC Sites and Trails. And it essentially provides the ACRD with the responsibility to maintain, build, construct trails on Crown land. So it's very different than a permit or license of occupation through a Ministry of Transportation right away. And then also, if there's an overlapping tenure, like in the woodlot tenure area, they still have the rights to log those sections. We would just we'd have a seat at the table to, have a conversation about retaining recreational values there, but we wouldn't have the legal protection of those trails.
So do we have any other trails that are like this?
I don't think we do off the top of my head.
Thank you. Next up, I have Directors Bodnar and then Corbeil.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. My understanding, you were saying if we do everything that we have already passed, then later on we can look at expansion of Maplehurst to the other areas. Is that correct?
So I think that comment is just that, if we choose not to pursue expansion today, it just doesn't exclude us from pursuing it at a later date.
Okay, because I just wanted to clarify that first motion that's under there.
Okay. Is that it, Dr. Bodnar? Thank you. Next up is Director Corbeil and then Shannon. Is there anyone? Director Corbeil, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jack. I'd just like to say that I think we'd be making a huge mistake if we didn't pursue the expansion into the adjacent Crown lands, because I would expect it to be a fairly lengthy process. If we don't start now, it's never going to get done. If we do start now, I would be surprised if we could get it in the next 2 or 3 years, but it'll give us plenty of time to figure out all the various funding regimes needed, but it will likely take time. So I would certainly support pursuing the expansion into the adjacent Crown lands. Thank you.
I second that motion.
Is that a motion? I'm just waiting for, Wendy's not here.
As I'm taking notes, is it fair to say that you would have moved the motion that's there, striking not?
Correct.
Okay, and that was seconded by Director McNabb. Okay, are there any further comments or questions? Director Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. So from my perspective from Beaufort, because Beaufort does not have the service of Parks and Trails, my understanding that would mean if we're looking at expansion and including the area that is in Beaufort and the top section there where there is also the woodlot license, that would mean going through the process of not only the woodlot and the province, but also a referendum of putting a service into Beaufort to get that part of the trail expanded, correct? Because we do not have that service.
Oh, go ahead.
So how does Beaufort contribute to the Lachlan Trail?
It's a regional
Park.
Jenny and Terry both turned on their screens.
Michael, could we stop sharing the map? And Terry and then Jenny?
Just that, yes, if we have to bring back a staff report, it'll have to involve governance options because even if we expand into Beaver Creek, I don't know if we'd want to just have some paid out of Beaver Creek Parks and some paid out of Cherry Creek Parks, because now we're crossing potentially 3 boundaries. But yes, currently Beaufort pays for the log train trail through regional parks, but has no service of their own. We might be able to do a conversion of letters patent and get them a community park without going to referendum if the director would like to do that at that time, but there would definitely be a process involved if we're wanting tax contribution from the area of Beaufort. On the flip side, Cherry Creek could take on a greater park and we could run it through Cherry Creek Parks, even though it's not in their boundaries. I believe it'll just define, we'd have to look at what their the letters patent state on there. So yeah, it will definitely create some governance issues that we can bring back.
Okay. And Jenny, did you have any additional? No? Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I think Terry summed that up pretty good. It is complicated. And this is something that we can look at a longer term. And I think that definitely the community has expressed this. It's something we've identified in the management plan. From a staff perspective, when we look at this, we also see that this is a significant amount of time. So this is not a simple issue. This is very complicated, will require a lot of staff time. We'd have to drill into it. A lot of parties are involved. So we can pursue it, but we also have a very heavy work plan with a lot of other initiatives and strategies on our plate right now. So I think we might want to look at just where this falls in the priority list for all of the initiatives that we want to do within parks when we start moving down this path. That's just a little thought to consider. Yeah, but I think it's well done, and I'm glad that everyone's considering this thoroughly.
Thank you. Director Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So to follow up at this time, I would not be in support of Beaufort for the amount of area that this trail is in for the taxpayers and all the hoops that need to go through for Beaufort. I mean, maybe the motion goes at this time and we talk when it comes to budget. And mostly because we don't have that service in Beaufort, and that's a big process in itself. If we're looking at the majority of the areas, I can't find my map anymore, of it, because most of it, as mentioned in the report, is in the Beaver Creek area on the Crown land and not necessarily in the wood lot. I think that might be a different conversation, but right now for Beaufort, I would not be interested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further comments? Okay, any further comments? Directors Cote and then Bogner.
Thank you. A question to staff. If this turned into a Cherry Creek Park, could it be run where there's contributions from Beaufort and Beaver Creek as well as Cherry Creek? I'm thinking sort of similar to the Marine Patrol program that we had, the way it was run, the service through Sprout Lake Parks. Thanks.
It's a very convoluted way of doing it, which was why we went to referendum for Sprout Lake Marine Patrol. And again, Beaufort doesn't have a service at all. So there's nothing to kind of run it through. From a Beaver Creek perspective, we could, but not really from a Beaufort.
Director Bodner.
Thank you. Two things. The first motion there, could that first motion be changed to pursue Maplehurst Trail expansion on adjacent Crown lands in Beaver Creek and to leave out Beaufort?
You can put that forward as an amending motion.
Okay.
You can just say, I'm going to do that, and then I'm pretty sure Director Shannon will second that.
Okay, I would like to do that.
Okay, and seconded. Oh, please go ahead.
Okay, Thank you. I appreciate that. I struggle with how much would have to come from Beaufort for the small section of the trail network that's in there, especially with a referendum and all that time that would have to take. I fully appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into those trails already, and I fully support looking at what we can do to preserve these. But for the size of population of Beaufort for this section of trail, I'm just struggling with including that in there right now for all the work that it would take. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Director Corbeil.
Could I have just some clarity that the portion that that map showed that's in the Beaufort is already in a woodlot license, which is probably not going anywhere. And I think as Michael, you spoke about how there was going to be some conversation, or there has been, with the woodlot owner about accessing some of his property. But I don't think anybody, at least I'm not thinking that that whole woodlot's going to disappear. That's still going to be there, and there may be a trail through it, but that would probably be the limit. Would you not agree?
So yeah, I'd say that, us getting a section 56 or 57 is the more, or the first step. 56 would be the second step to kind of legally entrench, our permits over the trails. It wouldn't preclude any logging in this area. The province sees this area, the Crown land, as multi-use area. So it facilitates industry, recreation, a number of things, and they think that these priorities can all happen at the same time. So.
Okay, thank you. So we are discussing the amending motion now. This is to remove the mention of the Beaufort area. So that would erase and Beaufort and the S after area. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Yeah, let's try that again. Everyone in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. So now we're back to the original motion, which now has deleted any mention of Beaufort. And if you're comparing it to what's on the agenda, we have stricken not and removed the mention of Beaufort. So any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amended motion? All opposed? A motion carried. Thank you. And so now that we've passed that, there's still reason to take a look at the second motion here. So Director Bodner, if you look at the second motion under item G, are you willing to put that forward?
I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Please. Does this mean that staff to maintain governance structure and fund operations for Maplehurst Park within the Cherry Creek Community Park Service? Does that mean that Cherry Creek would be expected to fund that, or would there be grants for that? I don't understand.
Go ahead.
I'd say that the maintaining the current governance structure would be that, if there is an asset within an electoral area, then that community park service would fund those assets. So if our parks in Cherry Creek, they'd be funded through the Cherry Creek service area. If we were to expand within Beaver Creek, the same governance structure would occur where the Beaver Creek or community park service would fund those assets.
And that's usually is the standard that's usually done. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And I assume there would be potentially motions and resolutions in the future that would seek and establish clarity as we move forward with any discussions regarding changes in governance or expansion and so on and so forth. So there'll still be chances to have discussions about that. Yeah.
And I'm prepared to make that motion that the Alberni Craiglock Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to maintain governance structure and fund operations for Maplehurst Park within the Cherry Creek Community Park Service.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? So it's important to keep tabs on this conversation as it moves forward, though. All right. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just keep the Michael McGregor show going here. If you could let us get into item 8, which is the expansion of the Alberni Inlet Trail. Please go ahead.
So thank you. And we went to the committee of the whole at the end of June We brought forth the report. In that report, had extensive discussions about the option of creating a pedestrian crossing on Franklin River and also exploring the expansion of Alberni Inlet to include stage 3. I think at the time, the committee of the whole passed the motion recommending that the board support adding that project on our work plan and adding it to our grant funding list to pursue a suspension bridge or steel structure and not the cable car option.
Director McNabb, go ahead. Oh, microphone.
I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to consider the Franklin River project when appropriate grants become available for a suspension bridge.
Okay. No steel?
Unless somebody else is going to pay for it.
Okay. Okay, do we have a second? Thank you, Director Corbeil. Any further comments? Director Shannon, go ahead.
I feel like I would leave the motion as is, so it would be still an option.
Well, I mean, the reason for, I'm sorry. So the reason for that is we've got a lot on our table, like a lot. And the impact of the COVID relief funding is going to hit in 2023. So we really need to be looking at the direction of our funds and where they're coming from, who's paying for it, whatever. I mean, if a grant came through to pay for the $1.2 million for the other bridge, great. But the suspension bridge is a much more durable bridge for something that you can't basically be there every day. You know, if you get a storm and the tree comes down, the suspension bridge is more likely to be there than the other truss bridge. So, and somebody's not going to go out there with a welding torch or cutting torch and cut it up and take it home. So I think it is the kind of the more logical option, and certainly at almost $500,000 less, it's more economical and fun to walk on.
Says you. Some of us are afraid of heights. So that being said, we have a second. Is there any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item I, which is the update on the hole in the wall.
So at the same committee of the whole meeting, we brought an update on a recent stakeholder meeting for hole in the wall. At that time, the Ministry of Transportation had committed to doing a signage and engineering review. We haven't seen that review quite yet, but once the Ministry of Transportation has those reviews available for us to digest, the idea is to bring back the stakeholder group to discuss further. And then we're also looking for some grant funding to do some planning for options for this.
Thank you. Looks like a pretty straightforward motion. Director Bodner, go ahead.
Yes, I would really in favor of having these parties come back. The situation is really getting worse as far as Mosaic property is concerned. A member of the club that tried to take the trailer in here last week got caught up in a big mess of cars there. They had to call the police to direct traffic off of the highway. So I think it's really important that we keep looking at this and having discussions. So I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors instruct staff to coordinate discussions with interested parties around examining options for establishing safe parking near Stokes Falls.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to item J, a cell tower at West Coast Landfill. Please go ahead.
So this is another project that's been before the board before. This cell tower is proposed at the West Coast Landfill, and which is the property that we own. So we have a license with Rogers that we've approved for them to place that cell tower there. This letter of concurrence is through the process of public consultation that's required for them to go through. It's a federal process. And usually as the local government, we wouldn't be also having it on our property, but in this case, we need to provide a letter of concurrence, even though we have approved this at our landfill already, and staff are satisfied with the process that they proceeded with.
Thank you. Director Roberts?
Yeah, I'd like to make that recommendation to the Albany Blackhawk Board Director authorize the CEO to provide Rogers communication to other.
Seconded by Director Cole. And then comments, Director Steer?
Yeah, I had two questions. One, the revenue, the financial part indicates there would be about $17,000 in revenue for that use of that land. First question is, I suppose that is a standard contract rate and how that was negotiated. And my second question comes in, and I noted that there was a letter of support from Tlaloquit First Nation. And I'm wondering if within the conversations with Tlaloquit, if there was ever questions about revenue sharing for that particular revenue that is going to come forward, which is on traditionally Tlaloquit First
Nation. So we weren't present for the conversations between Rogers and Tlaloquit, so I'm unsure if that conversation occurred. I know that they had a number of meetings, and at first Tlaloquit was opposed to the project, and then they removed their opposition after their meetings. So I assume they went well, but I can't disclose any further information there. Sorry, what was the other question that you had?
It's okay. I think it's just the standard contract fees for that particular usage of land. So I'm very unfamiliar with that. I'm just curious if that was standard or if we could ask for more. So I just want to be sure.
Yeah, the ACRD hired a negotiator, and so did Rogers, and the negotiators kind of hashed that amount out over a couple of years. So.
Thank you for that. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. And then that brings us to Alberni Valley Landfill 5-year license of occupation. I believe that's Jenny. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we've been working for quite some time on a license of occupation for 5 years for the Alberni Valley Landfill. We were without a tenure for some time, and then we worked with Flinro to determine what would be the best next step. And so we're looking at this 5-year license of occupation, which really is just going to give us the time necessary to look at a longer term. So we'll be looking to apply for a 30-year term for the landfill. Now, when this landfill was originally sited, there was no consultation with local First Nations. And during this process, Flinro was looking very much to do that consultation. So the local First Nations both did independent environmental reviews, hiring consultants for that process. And Flinro actually provided funding for them in order to hire those expertise and consultants, which was excellent. And then the ACRD was involved in the process, looking at the concerns that were raised in that. And it's actually been a really wonderful process of really discussing with our closest neighbors some of the issues and concerns that exist with the landfill. So we've made a lot of good progress. We've committed to do a number of things, including we've established a specific landfill working group that we're meeting with. Our last meeting got delayed, but so far we've had 2 meetings this year, and we're looking to set that up quarterly. As we move forward with the solid waste management plan, we're going to be doing deep consultation, engagement really with Sashat, with Hupachesith on the landfill, and really talking with them about this and what does that look like for the future. Also, addressing those issues. Often because the landfill is very operational and we focus on meeting our regulations, we don't talk with the community about that. And I think that that's a real opportunity that's been identified in this process, is explaining in better detail what we do to monitor the landfill, to make sure that it isn't having a negative impact on the environment, and whether that be traffic, air, water, all of those things. So I think it's really given us a bit of a moment to pause and say, how can we do this better? And so I think we're working towards that. With that being said, we are going to need to invest time and energy and money in order to do that and do it effectively. And we know that this is just the beginning. And so as we work towards getting our 30-year license of occupation, we're going to have to put a lot more staff time forward. So we are recommending that the board allocates direct staff to allocate resources in the financial plan to address that. We're going to also have to put a little bit more time in for our environmental consultants as well. And we have talked with Flinro about getting assurance that they're going to continue to provide support for the First Nations to continue to engage from their part, because I think that's really important. So it's the beginning of a process that's going to keep unfolding, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director McNabb, go ahead.
So recognizing that this has been a very long process, I think 5 years is underestimated. So I would move that the Albany-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to enter into a license of occupation with the province for the Albany Valley Landfill for a 5-year term.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Shannon. Any comments or questions? All right. All those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried.
Move that the Albany-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to allocate resources in the 2023-2027 draft financial plan to support meaningful engagement with First Nations during the Albany Valley Landfill long-term tenure application process.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Any further comments? I think we have our work cut out for us. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Alex, you might as well take your camera, put it on. All right, so we're now into item 9, which is planning matters. 9.1A is the temporary use permit. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Chair Jack. So the first application we have for you is a temporary use permit for the short-term rental of a cabin located at 2401 Grant Avenue in the Millstream area of Long Beach. The board considered this application the first time at the July board meeting. Staff have now completed the neighbor notification process and note that one letter of support has been received from a neighboring property owner. That's included in your late item agenda. And the applicants intend to rent the newly built cabin while they are not utilizing the property, and have stated an intention to add a future permanent dwelling on the property and consider future rezoning to allow for more cottage residential development at the site. At this point, the applicants have satisfied all conditions outlined by the board for this temporary use permit, and staff recommend that the board issue the permit for a period of 2 years. Thank you.
Okay, Director Roberts, go ahead. Thank you. Is there
That the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 21004.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item B, please go ahead.
Thank you. The next application we have for you is another temporary use permit application for the short-term rental of a house located at 66 Sutton Road in the Port Albion area of Long Beach. The neighbor notification process for this application has also been completed. One letter of correspondence has been received from a neighboring property owner expressing concern about the owners not residing within the community. The applicants are new owners of the home, and they do intend to rent the house out when they're not able to utilize the property themselves. The applicants have satisfied all of the conditions outlined by the board, including confirmation that a caretaker based in Ucluelet is available to look after the property in their absence. And at this point, staff are recommending that the board issue this temporary use permit as well for a period of 2 years. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Roberts.
I would make the recommendation that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 22004.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckman. Okay, any further comments? Director Cole, go ahead.
Sorry, this is where I make a statement that, and the District of Ucluelet, we're looking very seriously at not allowing people who do not live and reside and contribute in the community to be having short-term rentals from afar. Just want to make that statement.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed, motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item C. I'm not going to try to pronounce any of that. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It's a temporary use permit day. This is another temporary use permit application we have for you, TUP 22007. This is for the operation of the Lost Shoe Creek campground located at 2660 Tofino Euclid Highway, just south of the highway junction towards Euclid. The temporary use permit would allow for the continued operation of the existing campground at the current density of 49 campsites, and that's with a mix of unserviced, partially serviced, and fully serviced, and as well as a mix of long-term monthly rentals and seasonal short-term tourist accommodation as well. Now, the neighborhood notification process has been completed for this application as well, and we did receive 4 letters of correspondence from the public, and they are included in your late agenda for your consideration. Each of the letters we received expressed support for the temporary use permit application. 3 of those letters were received from residents of the long-term side of the campground, and 1 letter from a neighboring business owner who has highlighted nuisance issues that have been in place in the past, but has noted that the operation of the campground this summer has been notably improved, which is good to see. We also have a referral response received from the District of Euclid, which highlighted requirements for a clearly marked site plan and a map layout posted at the entrance to the campground to aid emergency response. And we will highlight that the District of Euclid does provide fire protection services at the site. These conditions have been included into the temporary use permit, and the referral response is attached to the agenda if you'd like to take a look at it. Additional conditions, including the operation of the private water system and the on-site sewage disposal systems to the satisfaction of Island Health, have been confirmed, and staff now recommend that the board issue the temporary use permit. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dr. McNabb, go ahead.
I'm just wondering about the logistics of going with a temporary use permit versus rezoning.
Yeah, so the zoning of the property is currently a mixed accommodation commercial rezoning, and so it does allow for commercial campground uses with a mix of campsites and cottages. Now, at the lot size that they have there, the 6-acre lot size, the cap on the density in the MAC district zoning is 12 cottages and 24 campsites. So they have more campsites than what they would be permitted, and they don't have any cottages on site. They have expressed a desire to continue operating the larger campsite with a mix of long-term and seasonal short-term as well, and then not proceed with building any cottages. I think one of the benefits of the temporary use permit process for them is that it gives them a 2-year window to continue this use while they decide to what they want to do as a long-term future use of the property. There are a number of different property owners that share the site. One of the benefits on the regional district side is that the temporary use permit allows us to place additional conditions of use on there, such as how the site's operated, how it's serviced, how they deal with nuisance issues and things like that. And if there's an issue with those, the board has the option of revoking or going through a process to revoke the temporary use permit, or to encourage them to mitigate those concerns. So I think the TUP process for the regional district gives us some extra control over the site. Yeah, happy to answer more questions on that if you like.
Are there any comments or questions or motions? Director Roberts, go ahead. Was this presented to the Area Planning Commission?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was considered at the meeting at the beginning of July, and the APC did support the application as presented, and noted that there was a stronger desire to see more longer term accommodation, recognizing that there's a number of local workers and staff of local businesses that do reside at the site. But the APC did support the application as presented.
Yeah, thank you for that. And with that, I would like to make the recommendation that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 22007.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Alrighty, I think that brings us to item D, Sprout Lake item. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is another temporary use permit application for the development of a 10-site campground on the 6-acre property located at 9211 Central Lake Road in the Sprout Lake area. The application was considered at the July 27th meeting, and the board resolved at that time that they were disposed to deny the TUP application and deferred a decision to allow the applicant to address the board. And we heard from Richmond at the beginning of this meeting. The staff report and package provided for the board highlight the application details for the development of what he intends to do there, which is a master planned RV community with up to 10 sites intended for long-term accommodation. The staff recommendation at this point is to deny the application, as staff highlight that the proposal is contrary to direction provided by the board previously to direct staff to prepare a new rural Central Lake use designation in this Sprout Lake official community plan, which would apply to this area and intend to maintain a predominantly rural and agricultural character of the neighborhood. Now, I do want to highlight as well that if the board intends to pass a resolution to proceed with the consideration of the temporary use permit and go to the neighbor notification stage, the appropriate motion, including the conditions of approval and the temporary use permit conditions, is provided in the options considered section of the report on pages 266 and 267 of the agenda. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this one.
Thank you. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Because of the report that came out, I agree with staff and that the Board of Directors deny temporary use permit TUP 21007. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have a seconder? Director Bodnar, thank you. Hey, any further comments? Director McNabb?
So this is another one that, you know, if we're going to go down this road, rezoning of this property, basically to create something that's long-term, create this versus something that's short-term, would be, in my mind, a better route. You know, to establish it as a ongoing business for rather than a 6-year possible term. You know, create the situation that makes it a business instead of a thought. So I mean, I don't know if we can. The person would have the opportunity to do that. I think at this point, you know, after, if there was a vote to not support it, that they would have the opportunity to actually seek rezoning.
The applicants would have an opportunity in the future. Yes, the board does have the development procedures bylaw highlights what happens to an application after it's denied. So you're limited in applying for the same thing again within 6 months of an application being denied. So staff would have to look into what the implications of that would be for a temporary use permit versus a rezoning. I do know that in speaking with the applicants, they do have a strong desire to see it rezoned for campground use, obviously to secure that use for the long term. And having said that, I would think as planning staff, my comments about the ability to control how a site is serviced and developed through the temporary use permit is a good tool for us to utilize. And if the applicant would like to discuss their options further, we'd be happy to do that following the decision by the board. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I think a motion has been put forward and seconded already. So unless there are any other comments, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. So that brings us into item 9.2A, which is for all directors in regards to Well, please, Alex, go ahead.
Excuse me,
Sure, thank you.
One moment, Director Bodnar.
I just wanted, there's one more temporary permit for, that isn't on the agenda for Robert and Tracy Diddy.
It's not on the agenda. It wasn't supposed to be?
Oh.
Yeah, it's, don't believe so.
Oh,
I can give a quick update on that one. So we expect that application to come forward at a future board meeting once the applicants have satisfied some of the outstanding conditions of use. So we look forward to bringing that in the future.
thank you.
All right, thanks for that. That brings us to 9.2A. So Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jack. The last application we have for you is a referral from the province from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch regarding a structural change to the liquor license capacity at the Clayoquot Wilderness Lands Camping Resort, and that would increase the capacity from 50 to 130 persons. The resort is located in a remote area north of Tofino, about 8 kilometers north in Clayoquot Sound. As many will recall, the property was rezoned earlier this year to accommodate the existing resort uses, facilitate replacement of their cookhouse and lounge building, and to allow for the increased capacity. The regional district has the option to either opt out of gathering public input ourselves and allow the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch to gather community input directly, or to actually resolve that the ACRD gathers our own public input by way of either a public notice, a public hearing, or a referendum, or similar public process. At this point, recognizing the time required to do so, staff recommend that the board support the application for the structural change to the license, which would increase the capacity, and then also resolve to opt out of the public input process and rely on the province to conduct that themselves. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Director Roberts.
Yeah, thank you for that, through the chair. I'm happy to see that we're going to lay this back on the liquor distribution branch. I don't think it's necessary for staff to get involved in that, and I agree with the resolution. And now to make that recommendation, that the board of directors support the application for a structural change to the Clayoquot Wilderness Lands liquor primary license to increase the maximum capacity from 50 to 130 persons, and to resolve that the ACRD opts out of conducting the public input process.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cole. Any further comments? Director Steer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just do want to comment in general, I will support this, but in general, the ability for the ACRD to have input in these types of primary liquor license applications for expansion, I think it's important to recognize that if there is a strong responsibility for local government to look at the public health implications of some of these responsibilities. And in this particular case, I know the resort very well. It's in a remote location and it is in a resort. But when these applications come at a community level somewhere in there, that they have to be looked at very carefully in the bigger picture and the bigger context of what this can mean from a public health and safety perspective. So I will support this in principle, but I would like the ACRD board to be very cognizant of the ability to have input into these types of applications and how important they are from a public health and community safety aspect. And also just to as a heads up, we had a presentation from a medical health officer for our particular region. Alcohol was the #1 public health concern by far in our region and by extension into the province. I do want to flag that for most people here when we have these types of conversations and when they do come to our table. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Oh, and Dr. Roberts, could you turn the mic off? Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to staff reports. Would anyone like to pull anything out? I would note that the schedule is now going to have a meeting in early September. Yeah, on the 7th. Seeing none, we could have a motion to receive. Thank you, Dr. Shannon. And a comment, go ahead.
And a comment, thank you. Just for clarification on the date of the board meeting, it would be Wednesday, August 28th, not the 24th.
Right?
Yeah,
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's an
Okay,
error.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we have a second by Dr. Cole. Dr. Cote, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Question on page 290. The Ministry of Forest license to cut L52115 West Coast Multi-Use Path. Oh, okay, so it's just the path from between McEwlett to the park? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, with that, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Okay, committee reports? Nope. Member reports. Item A is 911 Corporation.
So our meeting is coming up in 2 weeks, but we did have a letter that, or contract that came from TELUS that made a lot of the next gen 911 issues local government issues. So I brought that up with our executive board, and they're going to be issuing a letter clarifying how North Island 911 is going to be responsible for the issues that TELUS is expecting local government to be in charge of. So it will be a letter of comfort. So if the regional district is meant to sign that for us all, but we're not going to do that until we get the letter in front of us and understand that that's why we have North Island 911. So.
Thank you for that. Okay, next up is the library, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. To the chair, so Viral has had a successful summer reading program ongoing, and the board is entering into the budget process.
Thank you for that. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Corbeil, any chance you have a report? If not, it's okay. Okay, no report. Air Quality Council, Dr. Bogner. Okay, thank you. West Coast Aquatic, Dr. Steer. AVICC, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. For the board's information, there is a request for proposal or request for proposal, I guess, for a job. Our AVICC executive coordinator has taken another position as of June 15th, and we have had no one in that position primarily. Our contract is with UBCM, not specifically with Liz Cookson, who has moved on, and right now we're looking for someone desperately. We need the support. And our UBCM lunch this September, AVICC has a lunch, and we sent an invitation to Premier John Horgan, and he has accepted. So that's my report.
Great, thank you. Next up is Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee, Dr. Muna.
No report, thank you.
Sawwakin Public Advisory Group, Dr. Muna.
A little bit of a report. Several of us attended the board table here, attended the unveiling of the sign at Franklin Camp. Is that Franklin Camp?
I don't, it's on Franklin Road.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what it was. But misdirected, but we all got there. So it was great. It was it's a neat sign. If you want to drive out there, you're still on pavement, and you can have a look at it. And it's a step forward, and it was a neat ceremony as well. So going forward.
All right, thank you for that. Oh, okay. So yeah. So just as a background, Huayet, through a holding company, owns 35% of the tree farm license for number 44. You know, that used to be completely owned by Western Forest Products, but now we've set up a limited partnership to co-own it. So 35, 65 or whatever. So because of that, there was a rebranding because eventually Huayet's planning on trying to acquire 51% over time. And so the rebranding is Sawwakin, which means we are one. And it really is a model for moving forward in regards to natural resource development in BC. At least a model. We'll see what other ones come out of other arrangements. Yeah, thank you. That brings us to item I, Agricultural Development Committee. Dr. Shannon?
Thank you. I'm going to highlight a couple of the minutes. I wasn't actually able to attend the meeting that was just held, but Director Cote did. So if she wants to jump in on anything, she's more than welcome. But I wanted to highlight that there was a Fire Smart workshop for egg producers from our new Fire Smart coordinator. And there's an application intake for a cost share pilot program to help BC farmers and ranchers prepare for extreme weather. And Randy found that there was not a lot of uptake in the workshop, but I would note, and I don't know if we can give feedback to the province, but a workshop during haying season probably isn't ideal for producers to attend meetings and put grants together. And that was the biggest one that I saw. And from the fall fair, they're prepping for the fall fair this year to be at the fairgrounds. And then that's what I pulled out of the minutes. But Penny, if you have anything else that came out of the meeting that stood out to you? No.
Okay, with that, next up is the Redfish Restoration Society, Central West Coast Forest Society. Dr. Roberts?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Any other reports? Seeing none, all those, could we have a motion to receive the reports? Thank you, Dr. Shannon, Dr. Beckett. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. No unfinished business. I don't believe we have any late business. Question period. There was a question that was asked by someone in regards to the Maplehurst item.
Yes.
Are they still online? We should, because we're recording and broadcasting, we should ask it anyway. Please go ahead.
Yes, so we did have 5 attendees, but now we're down to 0. But in the Q&A, there was a comment made from Sherry Harrison. When will the ACRD show the findings from the surveys done on the other 2 parking lot recommendations, Catsuxis Road and Strathcona Road? Also, will they show us the environmental impact study that this proposed parking lot on Willow Road will have on the Catsuxis Creek tributary? Thank you. The ACRD assured the public at the meeting in May that they would give a 3 parking lot site equal consideration. No.
Okay. I'm wondering if there's any response to that because the decision was made. Yeah, he's not here. Jenny? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, we will reach out to Sherry and speak. We can basically show her the detailed report where we've got the 6 access options, and then also give her a summary. I think if she was in the meeting, she would have seen the discussion on moving forward and looking at securing those trails. And we're looking at next steps. So I think that right now it's just, we know that we have the first step, and then also we're going to look at what the other access options are for the park, but we will, from a staff perspective, follow up on that.
Okay. All right, with that, I think that's it for question period. If you don't have any other responses at the email address?
No, nothing else, and there's no other attendees. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. With that, I am wondering if we could have a motion to go into recess for the hospital district meeting. Okay, thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Cole. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Shuffling paper here. Okay, so I'd like to call the Hospital District Board of Directors meeting to order and recognize that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Petchesip and Tishat First Nation, that we honor and respect that, and ask for an approval of the agenda. Kenya and Rochelle. And is there anything to add to it? No, everybody's happy. Everybody in favor? John? Yes.
If I could, I've got a question I want to ask regarding visitation rights to the hospital, and I'm not even sure if this is the right venue for that question.
And we could add that somewhere. Where could we add that?
Maybe at the very least.
Other reports maybe?
Other reports. Sure, we'll add it in other reports. Alrighty, so we need adoption of the minutes of July 27th.
Second.
Everybody's read them, they take 6 seconds. All in favor? Approved. No petitions, delegations, correspondence for action, correspondence for information, request for additional bylaws. Now we have reports, so you can have your report.
All right, this is my report on visitation rights to the hospital. So it came to a friend of mine, and I seen this on Facebook, was wondering why at the hospital you're only allowed 2 visitors during the day, and the visitation time apparently is simply between 3 and 5 p.m. And this is very unique to our hospital. Other hospitals apparently allow much more freedom, more visitors in the longer visitation time. And I'm familiar with Echo Village, which is pretty much throughout the day you're allowed to visit, and there's no limit to how many different people can visit the person. So I'm wondering, is it this board, or is who's actually the people that make those decisions?
So that would be actually the administration of the hospital itself that would bring that forward. And yes, Daniel.
If I can help, once every 2 weeks, the ACRD is part of a group that does meet with the hospital. I can advance that question in 2 weeks' time. We just had our meeting this morning, but I can advance that question in 2 weeks' time and get back to you.
All right, so going through our other reports. Banfield Health Center,
No report, sir.
great. Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society, West Coast Native Health Care Society. Oh, she's not here. So when I skip over, she won't know. Tofino General Hospital.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, the site director's not been available, but in conversations with the chief of staff, it has been a very busy summer once again. Interestingly enough, some of the beds, the palliative care section of our hospital is being utilized to a great extent. And this just was an interesting note, as we only have a 10-bed capacity at the hospital. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board, and that's it for the report.
Great, thank you very much. And so we have a mental health issue. So I'll skip over Alberni Clayoquot Health Network for a second and just go to West Coast General Hospital. I've been attending the bi-weekly construction meetings, and the scale and scope of that project and the time it takes everybody is amazing. But I had a question with regards to where we are on a budgetary basis. And I asked this question twice and I got an answer today. So the contract for the portion they're doing right now is $4.6 million. And right at this present time, they're $125,000 over budget because of change orders that have happened. And I did tell you, I think previously, that they planned on being finished by Christmas. They announced that they were going to be finished in the first week of December, leaving on Tuesday. So the budget for overages, a contingency budget, is $500,000 to $600,000. So I was worried that we were going to have to come up with more money from this table if they were going to be over budget. So that doesn't appear to be the case. Now, returning to West Coast Native Health Care.
Hello. Just to report that we are experiencing a nursing shortage. Very similar to the doctors. There's a problem with all the facilities here and beyond with nursing shortages. Very problematic when people's lives depend on having nurses there. I heard that the hospital was supposed to have 9 nurses on staff. We were running short with, I believe, 4 or 5 nurses at one particular time. Rainbow Gardens is having an issue trying to get some nurses to come, and when it's dependent on funding. When a nurse can work at the hospital overtime and get double time, they're going to take that shift over working at a facility. Also, there was a question about other facilities offering signing bonuses with Rainbow's staff, which doesn't sound like it should be legal, but there's that issue that's happening right now. They had their AGM, the report is available upon request, and our new facility, 40 low-cost housing unit, should be open in October on schedule. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, and carrying on, Alberta Claypot Health Network.
No report. We're resuming again in September.
Wow. Okay, no unfinished business, no late business. Questions? Nope.
No question.
Okay. I think we forgot to announce that this was on Zoom and all the rest of that stuff. Oh well. Here we are in the movies. Okay, motion to adjourn. And so we got 2 movers, all in favor?
Oh yeah, receiver report.
Okay, let's do that first. Somebody would move that the Regional Hospital District Board of Directors receive reports A to G plus. And Director Shannon and second Director Johnson. Now, everybody in favor of that? Okay, now we get a motion to adjourn. Seconder, everybody, all in favor? Carry. We're out.
Okay, so I think the next step is just to wait for the broadcast to end. We'll be going in camera after I read out the reasons why we go in camera. So thank you for not disconnecting yet, because I forgot I had to do that. Yeah, it's only for one reason, actually. This is a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91F, law enforcement, if the board considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. And that's so moved by myself. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Shannon. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so